Last time on Cursebreaker. We played our entire first campaign, and we wanted to thank you all for joining us. We've had some time to process it all, and we're ready to talk. So here we are. We've gathered up one last time to talk all about Cursebreaker and what's next for Bebop. So sit back and relax with us as we answer questions from each other and from you, our listeners. A little more casual than we have in the past.
Nice. We're great at casual. We're so good at that.
Good at that. It's kind of our thing.
So for the first part of this, I've just got a general wrap-up reminiscing section. So all about Cursebreaker. So this is like one of the few in-character questions I'm going to ask, and this kind of goes to all of you, and we can just go around the table. But what did each of your characters immediately do following the events of our campaign? Holly, do you know exactly what Holly did?
Yeah, I think Holly went back to Tildry to spend quality time with her sister, Ivy. They hadn't really had a lot of time together, so that's probably top of her priority. And then I think Holly probably wanted to help rebuild the business in the city of Tildry a little bit, just from the catastrophes that and the fires and all that stuff, just to help the rebuild effort. And then I also think Holly would have tried. So Margot Bingo, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. Margot kind of stepped up as more of a political leader for Tildry, sort of representing the guilds. And so I think Holly would have maybe tried to backfill her in the guild as a guild leader.
Definitely, yeah. She's got a different position at this point.
Okay. So yeah, I think Holly would have vied for becoming the guild leader and replacing Margot Bingo. And then I also had this idea that Holly would eventually, after things settle down more, try to start a charity or a school maybe for girls who want to get into business, and maybe underprivileged girls specifically, because that was kind of her background. And so teaching them business skills or tradesman skills so that they could go off into the world and start their own successful business, just like Holly's Cobb. I also think, with her love life, very illustrious, as we all know, but Holly would probably be seen entertaining a certain fae elf gentleman around Tildry.
Holly and Dolly.
Yep, Holly and Dolly, hearts forever. And then I don't know if they'd settle down and get married and that kind of stuff, but I think they definitely would continue to see each other romantically. And then I think anytime the Cursebreakers are in town, Holly would convince them all to go out to the Live, Laugh, Love, Life nightclub for old time's sake. And I think her and Tibio would become good dancers, cool dancers at the nightclub.
Fuck yeah.
I think we can say canonically too that Mina the alchemist ended up taking over the Live, Laugh, Life juice bar.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
Sure.
Juice bar
that makes
/
sense.
nightclub.
Yeah.
It's a way happener spot.
Yeah.
That's not a word.
Much less seedy.
Happening.
Yeah, and then I'm sure Bert and Holly have a standing coffee date once every other week or something like that, just to
Absolutely
see each other, since we're both in Tildry.
That's such a good handoff to Bert. We can skip me and come back.
Yeah, Bert,
Let's do that,
what
yeah.
are you up to?
Okay. Like Holly, Bert also returned to Tildry right away, helping rebuild the damage done a little bit by us and also by the judges. I guess his parents also returned and probably helped finance rebuilding some of those towers. And now, embarrassingly, I suppose one of them is named the Wisher Spoon Wing or something.
Yeah, yep, I think that's also true.
Bert, of course, published his book.
Oh, okay.
That was a huge priority.
So the whole campaign, essentially, or does it span beyond that?
Yeah. It's a Bilbo situation.
Sure.
What's the title of the book?
What's the title of the
Here
book?
and back there again.
It's probably just called Cursebreaker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's just called Cursebreaker. I made that up.
That leaves us a lot of opportunity if we want to do like a novelization down the road.
Yeah.
It could be people being people too.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. Okay.
People
perfect.
being
yeah.
curse breakers.
People helping other people.
Curse-breaker.
No,
or,
that's the name of Holly's charitable organization. is
that's
People helping other people.
Yeah.
P-hop.
These
Thomas,
pancakes are bad.
Fop.
you definitely could go the Hobbit route though and just call it Curse-breaker or people being people.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
So there's a little book tour, probably involved that. You get to leave the city. But I'm also thinking Bert was offered some sort of higher up position at the Tower of Knowledge that maybe he took for a year and then stepped down because he didn't like the kind
Yeah.
of bureaucratic role.
Sure. That tracks.
Did Bert keep the Book of Knowledge forever? Like, did he keep it kind of secret and just have it in his possession, basically?
Yeah. That thing became really powerful.
It
by the
sure
end.
did, didn't
Yeah,
it?
Yeah.
Then it is probably kept safe in the Wisherspoon wing of the Tower
Okay.
of Knowledge. Yeah.
That makes sense. Perfect.
Yeah.
Tibio.
So Tibio went home and immediately made the like hereditary necromancy underworld guardian thing not a secret. He encouraged his people to like share that knowledge, not in an evangelical way, but in a here's what life and death kind of look like. Here's what to look out for if somebody is promising you things that they can't really deliver. If they're promising you eternal life, that's not real. That's not safe. And I think he made an effort to kind of connect memoir with the rest of the world. Like, really reached out to Tildry and to Bert and Holly and said, hey, we need to make sure that all of the channels of communication are open in case of some other catastrophic event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just kind of tried to reconnect the societies of the world with the Fae and with memoir and have kind of more open communication and less secret keeping and power hoarding. That's kind of his goals.
And so does Tibio remain in memoir or is he kind of a worldly entity?
I think he has like a seat in memoir that he kind of holds court in,
Sure.
where people can come to him if they have questions or concerns, or if some random curse breaks through some random portal somewhere, he can do something about it. I think that he would travel, but he would feel very drawn to home and wanting to make sure that everything is safe there
Yeah.
and starting at home and really feeling that like pressure, or like not pressure, but responsibility from his flight of fancy before and knowing that he does have a responsibility to that
Yeah,
place.
I can definitely see Tibio always having that sort of piece of like his childhood in his heart where he's always going to want to be on some adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. So he takes like vacations pretty
Sure.
frequently, and
Yeah.
they're not actually vacations. Like he goes and he like does stuff like
Yeah.
adventures or solves a problem or goes and helps people somewhere. Yeah.
Uli probably, no, definitely settled down. Okay, hold on. Uli and Dave definitely got together at some point. Maybe not, yeah. For everyone who ships Uli and Dave.
Yay! We all ship Uli and
Dooley,
Dave.
Dooley.
Dooley.
Hashtag Dooley.
Hashtag Dooley. I'd like to think that they don't really have what you'd consider a settled down life. Not in the like starting a family kind of way, but I do think that they took in Maisie and kind of raised her together.
I'm picturing them like adventuring together as a family.
Yeah.
With our little Castor Maisie.
I think at some point they would have realized that there are other people who grew up like Uli with innate magic that can't really control it and were kind of villainized for it. And I'd like to think that they kind of opened their home to those kids And Uli tried to teach them what she knew. And with Maisie's help, who's a magic student, would have been able to figure out some sort of program or like summer camp. I don't know. I want Uli to have learned from her past and tried to help as many people as she could.
I love that. I love summer camp with
Yeah.
Uli and Dave.
Summer
I
camp
fucking
with Uli and
love that.
Dave. I also think that
Your next character is Maisie, right?
no.
Okay.
But they could have some ties. I don't know. We'll see. I also think that Uli started reconnecting with her family a bit more
Mhm.
and repairing broken ties and old hurts and stuff. So
Do you think Uli and Dave would have gone back to Hogwild, or do you think they would have just been kind of like one place for a few years, another place for a few years, like try to spread around?
I think home base at Hogwild for a while, just because that's where the rest of the family is. But Dave's family owned that mine, and Uli always kind of had a heart for adventure. So I think there wasn't a great amount of settling any one place, just going where they were needed. And definitely would go back to Tildry and visit
Cool.
and check in with Tibio and solve problems too. Go where they're needed, I guess.
And that leaves us with Snack.
Well, yeah, I'd say I don't think it's crazy to say that Snack is like approaching like demigod level in some ways, being able to morph into like a dragon that can like face down Idris or like
Well,
a figure like Idris.
Sure, I would say like in the power scale of D&D, I mean you're still beneath most dragons. I would say, whereas dragons can opt to turn
we
into
beat a dragon.
well, yeah, as a party.
Well,
Like he definitely had a lot of power.
Mhm.
It was definitely a force, and I think at this point, like honestly, Snack kind of got away from me. So I don't want to say too much about like what I think he would do,
Mhm.
but I'd say that like most likely he's kind of like a disrupting force within like the dragon flights, which have a lot of focus on order, and then there's this wild card like creature that is like multiple things, multiple different elements at play. So I hope he comes up in the future.
Fair to say he took up Idris on his winnings of the temple.
Yes.
Yeah,
In the east.
in the east. Yes,
have we all visited Snack's temple?
Yeah, have we?
interesting.
I would over what time frame?
I mean, like,
Say 15
Months
years.
or-
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he probably appears regularly and asks everyone when we can do that. So
Like
So-
when
You
they're
guys
all
can
going to
come
finally
over
come
whenever
over.
you want.
Yeah.
whenever it crosses his
oh, we're
mind,
just so
yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
Over and see the hot tub.
East is so far, though.
Yeah.
Where'd you say it
think
is? East?
Ooh.
Dave and Uli definitely would have come visit.
Yeah.
Maybe not for a long time.
It was a long debate on whether or not Maisie should come
Right.
as like
Yeah.
an influence.
Yeah. I suppose you could always gavel summon people when you need them.
Oh,
Exactly.
shit.
Yeah.
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 We never confiscated that.
Yeah. So for the rest of this, it'll be more, our opinions about the show personally, rather than our characters. So just to kind of kick that off, when you think about Cursebreaker as a campaign as a whole, start to finish, Lamplight to Vindorn, where does your mind go right away? What's your first kind of emotional reaction to it?
This is a hard one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, the sort of essence of Cursebreaker was, it's definitely like a belief in truth and a sort of like triumph kind of thing. It didn't hit so hard on like the bonds and friendships sort of thing.
I wouldn't say that.
Do you think it did?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the whole campaign was very personal growth
Mhm.
and depending on each other eventually. Like, our bond got so strong that we kind of became each other at the end. Not really, but like everyone was influenced by each other, and Uli had a lot of growth and started doing things that Uli wouldn't have done at the beginning of the campaign,
Mhm.
etc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think that the major lesson, quote unquote lesson at the end felt like it was, you don't have to be what you've always been.
Mm-hmm.
And part of, having friends, part of having people around you is letting them do things that you can't do and doing things for them that they can't do. It's about not always sticking to staying in your lane because it's habit, and doing stuff that, doing stuff collaboratively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learning from each other is like,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I like that. I was going to say growth too, both for our characters and also us outside of the campaign. Like we all became better players by the end of the campaign. Our recording got better by the end of the campaign and stuff. So.
I think we're all closer as friends too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we were actually playing, for me, it took a little while to feel supernatural. Not supernatural, sorry. It took a while for it to feel, like it was second nature to me coming into this and just knowing what to do each session, and like things had clicked and, it all made sense. And I think for me, that was probably around episode 10 or so. What do you guys think on that?
For me, it might have been after Bert's trial, or maybe as a result of Bert's trial, because that was a huge, character moment for Bert, and one I was very nervous about as a player.
Because you were really on the spotlight for those few episodes.
Yeah, and so once that passed, I think I had a lot more confidence about who the character was and in general.
I don't remember which episode it was. It might be Beach Days in Destiny, episode 7. And I think it was when we met the CurseBreakers on the road and kind of started learning more about that lore.
Yeah.
I think that kind of made the campaign start to build for me as a bigger story, because I think before that, the time we were in Lamplight was very more of just a smaller town story kind of at that point. So I think it was that episode. I'm not sure if that's right or not. Whenever we met those travelers and learned kind of about
Yeah.
the CurseBreaker tattoos and stuff.
Started giving direction to where we were headed.
Yeah.
I think around 6 or 7 for me too, but I think that's when I started getting comfortable with who Uli was as a character, as opposed to who I had created her to be.
I feel like there was a switch, and maybe you'll speak more to this later in the episode, but I feel like there's definitely a switch in Uli of all of a sudden it felt like you, Maggie, kind of figured out, oh, I don't just have to give one-word answers and be yeah, no, I'm a tough chick.
Yeah.
And you started to grow into that character more. There was definitely a decision I feel like you made about the character maybe, or just decided I want to play them in this way a little bit differently. I don't know.
Yeah. There was more of it was like a letting go and just letting her be me, I guess.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think an element of comedy is so important for anything like this. So really, I think it was honestly the country gnomes moment.
Yep.
When it finally clicked for me. It was I think more than just us would probably find this funny at this point.
Yeah.
And then I was okay, we're actually doing something people might like.
That's what I was waiting for too, is that genuine moment that really got me.
Yeah, where we just, it was truly a sign off where we were just dying.
Yeah, we were done. Yeah, we were done. Yep.
I think that was the first moment where we all just couldn't hold it in anymore.
Yeah.
We weren't in character. We kept breaking, and I don't know. It's
So if we're good with that question, that actually segues really nice into the second part of this. What are some behind-the-scenes memories that you have from recording? Because episodes 9 and 10 were recorded in the same night, and it was a miserable recording. It was
God.
5.5 hours long.
Yeah, that's right.
And it
That was
so
the
hot.
sweatiest, the buggiest,
Yep.
the worst evening of my life, but the recordings were just pure gold.
yes.
Maybe we need to turn the temp up.
There
all the
have
time.
No.
Turn the temp up, take the clothes off, baby. That's how this pod records.
There were other sessions where, I was not in a great mood, or it was uncomfortable because it was hot or whatever,
Yeah.
that turned out into really good episodes.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's just
So it seems like that doesn't influence.
Apparently not. Yeah.
or it's so much suffering. You just need to be somebody else. for
Yeah,
a
that
moment.
could be.
It's interesting because I think what you guys have all said about your experiences with certain episodes really dictating how kind of in it you feel. For me, it wasn't that at all. for me and Tibio, it was 100% the voice. As soon as I had the voice down, I was in it and I was him. So like, I couldn't tell you which episode it was, but it must have been in the first month of recording, like probably the first 4 episodes. Suddenly I had the voice and it was easy. I didn't sound like Borat anymore.
Only when you tried to do what accent on top of Tibio's accent.
God. When you guys started making me do accents on accents, I was like, I'm gonna die.
The Louis Armstrong.
Yes, it was Tibio as a kobold, and it was the fucking funniest thing. I couldn't stop crying.
But that was it for me. Like, I didn't have any. There were so many individual moments in each of those episodes that you guys are talking about where I felt like really, like as a player, really engaged and really, like in it, like invested in it. But as Tibio, after the voice came through, it was so easy for me to just be in that moment, be him and think as him. And then kind of outside of it, like over my own shoulder, be Tara, you know, rolling the dice, watching my screen, blah, blah, blah. So it's really interesting to talk about that kind of thing.
My bones.
We have edited these episodes down so much that there are like so many jokes. I don't even remember if they're in the episodes or if we cut them. But there's, I guess behind the scenes would be icebreakers because we didn't really release. We released some of them.
A couple, yeah.
But there are a few that we never did.
Yeah.
And those are like pretty good memories. Did we release the one where everybody switched spots?
I think we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
I think that was my favorite.
There was a hot tub one too, or like a spa kind of thing.
Oh yeah, the onsen or however you say it. Onsen spa hot tub.
There was one we didn't release.
Where we all were babies.
We were all babies.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
A lot of poop jokes.
Okay. Now I have to talk about it. Okay, so I have a request for campaign 2. And that is, we got to stop with the pee-pee poo-poo. We got to stop. We need to stop, not just for our listeners, for my own mental health. Like, it is fucking obnoxious how often we devolved into pee-pee poo-poo.
Well, I mean, how many times do you pee in a day? Like,
Yeah.
or
We don't need to
poop?
talk about
It's part of our lives.
It's assumed. No, we don't need to talk about
It's
it.
the universal
We
connecting thread of humanity.
Don't need to
and
talk about
the
it
animal
all the
kingdom.
time. All the time. It made sense for Snack to occasionally pee in a corner because he was a wild animal.
Okay, that
but
was funny, though.
That was very funny. But when it evolved into all of us suddenly talking about pee pee poo poo all the time, I was like, I'm gonna flip this table.
I think we cut a lot of it.
to me as
I
a
did
lot
not
of-
consent to pee pee poo poo.
Okay, next campaign. No.
I will say a lot of that probably stemmed from me because my family does that at like just family gatherings.
my
And my poor mother is like, she like cried once because she's like, why does every family dinner have to talk about poop? And she was like genuinely upset with all of us.
Kind of riding on the back of that behind the scenes memories. Does anybody have any tough memories or big adjustments we had to make?
It's fucking hot in Maggie's house sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
And the bugs.
The bugs.
But in here, it's not a big deal.
There's usually a few misunderstandings between me and Tim that get a little heated.
Sure.
That we tend to cut.
I think that happens between
Yeah.
other players too, not just you guys. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we've worked on it. It's a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And none of you have to hear it. So
I guess one, I love this and I hate it at the same time, but it's always like, should we put the cats away? And it's like, maybe this time it won't be a problem.
Yeah.
it's always a problem.
Maybe they just won't today for
Yeah.
some
Maybe
reason.
they won't cat this
It's
time.
like, okay, so like in about a half an hour, we'll stop recording and put the cats away instead of...
Yeah.
The time they like bees multiple times. I think one time he knocked the computer that we record on off the stand it sits on, and then
Oh,
another.
man.
There were
Yeah.
several times he just stepped on it,
Stopped
and stopped
recording
the
it.
recording.
Yeah.
God. And I keep thinking, I'll just hold on to him. It'll be fine. He just wants
never
to be in my
fine.
arms. It's never fine.
Never fine.
He like cannot not do it. So
It's fun.
I think there was one episode we brought Lyra and like
Oh,
never
man.
again.
Lyra's
we
a puppy.
recorded for maybe like an hour total.
Yeah.
That was
your
a tough
episode
one.
too. I think you can hear a little bit of her in there.
Yeah.
She's immortalized.
Yeah.
So as far as the plot goes of Cursebreaker, I tried to do my due diligence with the Chekhov rule and not leave a whole lot of loose threads, but there were a few of them. Are there any that stand out to you guys, or things that you're really still kind of wanting to know? Not that I'll tell you, but
Danny Deep Pockets / Carl Cart dude. I don't remember
The Danny D. Pocket salesman.
the like fey trickery salesman thing. It felt like there was going to be more to that because he was trying to get our names and everything, and then it just didn't. And I was always curious if that was going to be a plot thread that we never followed because
He
we
definitely
kind of
turned into a my cabbages kind
Yeah.
of guy.
But it felt like Tim was trying to convince us to like get involved with this stuff, and then we just totally fucked that shit up.
Because Holly was like, no.
Yeah, and then Snack bought bidet and like didn't buy the cart.
I'm
and
pretty
we
sure I
just, like-
told him my name too.
Yeah,
Like no consequences on that one, but thank goodness. At least
That
I
was-
know of.
That was an all-timer episode for the party just derailing
oh yeah,
everything DM was going for.
just
and
chaos.
yeah, naming bidet in the first place.
Yeah.
is be really big.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about going into this campaign from the get-go thinking that Tibio is a certain thing and having all of the things in memoir be basically Tim's idea. Like, I didn't have any ideas for... He was not intended to be king of the underworld.
Mhm.
I'll say
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like, that
yeah.
was a Tim creation that ended up really being super cool and a really interesting journey for Tibio. But, like, I just think about how simple our characters may have been at the beginning and how complex they were by the end and
Mm-hmm.
how they affected each other is just a really cool thing.
I think Tim does a really good job as a DM or GM of helping you start with this kernel of an idea, right? And that's D&D in general too, but I think Tim really fosters like your character throughout the campaign, which I think is one of my favorite things that you do, and like help that
My foster care of your characters.
like help them grow into something more.
Yeah.
Like you don't just let us play the same note over and over again, which I think is good.
For sure.
You also have a really good grasp on knowing everyone's loose threads and somehow weaving them together, which is really interesting because I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I
like-
have no idea.
The magic weave and Holly being able to see that was never something I came up with. That was Tim came up with that. So
Same
it's-
with Uli for being able to touch it and control it. Like, I don't know. It's just a very interesting concept. And then our characters ended up being pretty close in that regards, I think.
And the tears in the weave being portals to the underworld and having that all the curse breaking and the underworld necromancy stuff being the same shit was like mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I think that was really cool. So good job, Tim.
Yes.
I'm glad we pay you something for something.
Does anybody have a single standout memory or the biggest laugh from this campaign?
Oh my God, when we named Bidet,
Yeah.
that was when I lost my shit the most, probably that I can remember. And I think that's in the recording of that episode
I
too.
think you clipped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I'm a very loud laugher and loud person.
My favorite was the Bert's room screaming. Doesn't really
I don't even
scream
think that
Bert.
made the recording.
No, it did. It's down
There's
there.
some, yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah,
cut
it's
it down,
definitely
I
in there.
think,
Yep.
but yeah.
I'm like, not to toot my own horn, it was funny, but then everybody like cry laughing after that, and like we cut probably 2 minutes out of that laugh break. Like it went on for a while.
Yeah, that's actually something I might do less of in the future is cutting out our own laughter. I sometimes cut it out because I'm like, okay, we're really patting ourselves in the back here with this joke. But honestly, it's worth it sometimes. Yeah.
It was just one of those moments where everything was hilarious, and after the fact, Tara and I kept laughing about something, and was it the same joke or it was something
I think
else?
it was the same shit. We were just
like could
lost
not
in
keep
it.
it
Yeah.
together.
That was a good
Yeah,
one.
those are my favorite. I like when we kind of devolve.
I have another one too. So when John recorded some of the music with Tara on their own, and so we didn't hear it until like sometimes when the episode had posted. So we were hearing it at the same time. So when the 4L Juice Bar.
Oh my god.
When
Yeah.
the nightclub, okay, so John is singing in the nightclub song, and I like burst out laughing, like in a good way.
The Fizzle Potions one?
Yeah, the Fizzle
Yeah.
Potions.
Fizzle Potions.
And that's just
Prestidigitation.
I like lost it in the car when I was listening to that.
Same.
We were
driving back from
together.
Chicago.
Yeah, so it was
Yes.
Maggie, myself, Tara, and Tim were in the car together. I was driving, and you guys played that song because John sent it to us. He had a long weekend by himself, just recording in
Put it on
his
the
hot
speaker.
office.
Yeah.
We put it on the car speaker and played it, and we were all like, "Oh yeah, this is a bop, all right." And then it got to the part where he was speaking, and I almost crashed the car. I almost crashed the car.
I'm noticing something because like just to paint a picture of recording that song, we had a new puppy that was like just barking. I couldn't run the AC while I was recording, so it was like middle of summer, just like 100 degrees in the room, and I'm just like waiting for Windows when the dog's asleep so that I can record this. I'm just dripping in sweat, like, and laughing to myself. Yeah. So I
it
think
was
like
so good.
overheating is like
It's the key.
Yes. You just fry your brain a
that
little
just
bit.
gets that comedy.
Literally
juice.
sweatshop work conditions here
Oh,
at Bebop
man.
Podcast.
Suffering brings about the best ideas.
I'm sweating right now.
I know. Me too.
Oh, that was so good though. We had a lot of fun recording the music for this, but it was also a lot of work, like the Tibio theme. Oh, I can finally share that the Tibio theme was in all parts come up with while I was on the toilet, which is not pee pee poo poo, but it is pretty close.
Pee pee poo
I was
poo.
gonna
You're
say,
part of
it's
it.
my
You are
fault.
part of the problem.
It's my fault. I came up with both of those little kernels of melodies in the
Kernels, huh?
bathroom.
So what you're
Oh,
saying
Jesus.
is pee pee poo poo can be really
Jesus
inspirational.
Christ. Jesus Christ.
There was a maybe 40 or 50 episode gap between when we first saw Dave and Buster together and when
Yeah.
we saw them again.
Oh my God.
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
When we realized Dave and Buster, and then Hannah
What?
realized Dave and Buster.
40 episodes later.
And I think Hannah did realize it in the beginning and again.
But just forgot.
Yes.
That's very typical of
were-
Hannah.
You got two jokes out of it.
Yeah, I did. It was great.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's so much emergent stuff that comes up the table that's so funny. But then for you guys to come back with stuff is always the best for me. And a lot of it is just like the performative aspect of it. And so like some of the biggest laughs I got personally were like from Tibio and just some of the accent play. Because like describing to the giant in the volcano, the giant was asking what their favorite traps were. And Tibio's
Oh.
response was, "Oh, yes, I very much like the stales that make you go boing."
That was cute.
The architect was super funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was really good. That was very good. Yeah, a lot of those moments as Tibio, I don't even realize what I'm saying. I'm just saying words in Tibio's voice, and it's just chaos coming out of my mouth, and I don't know what I've said until I hear it back.
Well, you do it well.
Thanks.
I also think that Maggie's really good at coming up with puns, and I love puns. So I always I always tried to encourage her to be like, say your puns louder because they're
Yes.
very funny. 'Cause
There were
it's-
so many whispered ones that
She's
got
like-
missed.
yes, and this is my pun.
I
And I'm
I
like,
can never
"Maggie."
commit to it. I feel like it's just inappropriate timing half the time. I think the second half of the campaign, I've definitely
Yeah.
just let them happen
Letting
more.
them fly.
Maybe to a fault.
No,
No,
it's
it
great.
was good.
I think Snack's escalation of Farewell was really big.
Oh my
Farewell
God.
is like the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
Farewell was such a good character. Oh my God.
His antics continued to escalate throughout the appearances of Farewell. So if you listen to the very last instance of it in Vindorn, when he's on the bridge talking to, like the guards that won't let him
Both
through.
Jimmys.
Yeah, both Jimmys. He's really leaning in, and you can practically feel Farewell breathing on your neck, being like, and he says something like, he's like, "What's this? What's this?" And you get so irritated and so charmed by Farewell at the same time.
So good.
All right, let's move on to our next section here. These are questions from me to our players.
Right.
I finally get to find out what you really thought of the Cursebreaker campaign. My first questions to all, there were a few big reveals or surprises throughout the campaign. How much of that was actually surprising? And did you have your own theories as these things were developing? I might have missed some big reveals, but to me, they were like Holly's sister being a chameleon was a big one for me. Curses being undead spirits, Tibio being the guardian of the underworld, Genie being a spirit, and Joe getting his dragon.
I almost want to talk about a couple, but I'd say the Henri being Holly's sister,
Mm-hmm.
like when that scene happened, and also like, I mean, I've been watching things like Critical Role now and stuff like that. But when it was revealed that Chameleon was Holly's sister, and this was just a secret Hannah had with Tim this whole freaking time, I was like, you can do that? My mind was blown. I was like, you can, wow. Yeah. So I think that was like such like that one has like a high impact.
Cool.
And I'd say for like Jeannie, like I want to respond to that one since I was Snack. Like I feel like it's like doing like the I got your nose trick to a kid on some level, but like honestly, like it never ever occurred to me that Jeannie was cursing me until that reveal happened.
Dude,
Like,
same.
never.
That was like
I was like, I think that just like speaks to like how good it was and like subtle because I know you've dropped hints and stuff and like it just totally didn't notice. So listeners, you're probably smarter than me.
Yeah, I'd love to find out kind of what the other theories out there were as these things were developing, which it's kind of also great that we didn't really have that dialogue with any kind of audience. You know, there wasn't, you know, for this campaign, we didn't really have a conversation and everything kind of developed in a vacuum. So it's really interesting to see the result of that.
I am privileged because I live with the DM. So I get to know a lot of these things early. But I feel like it doesn't affect the way I play, and it still feels like a surprise when it happens in session because I know the basic theory behind all of it, but the way it comes about and the big reveals and how like dramatized it is and how everyone else reacts to it like makes it like I'm hearing it the first time, which is really cool. But I never really get to theorize unless you're letting me do that. You're like, do you want to know?
All right. Anything else on that same question?
Yeah.
Big theories or big reveals?
Yeah, I guess I have a
Yes.
couple thoughts. The chameleon being Ivy was not a surprise to me,
Because you have a sister.
except it kind of was. So for me, going into it with the dropping of the clues of like Ivy disappeared, she didn't know where her sister was. She had this chameleon, and she had like this kind of feeling that it was her sister and all that stuff. I was like, it's got to be her. It's got to be her. And then eventually, I was like, would that be too easy? Maybe it's gonna
doubt yourself.
Maybe they're gonna transfiguration this fucking chameleon and find out it's not her. Maybe that's the trick. So I kept going back and forth on like, it's gotta be, it can't be, it's gotta be, it can't be. And then it was. And just the way that Hannah, you played that was heart-wrenching.
Aw.
It was beautiful. There's a lot of times that Holly was a very like exuberant and chaotic character in the very fun way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those moments with Ivy, especially, you really brought the chops.
I could like not, especially when she changed back to human. There were parts, or like Tim's flashback to when we were kids. Like I get teary eyed just thinking about it. I'm a really easy crier, and so like it was almost hard for me to even play those scenes because I'm legitimately like trying to hold back tears.
Yeah,
And so,
you played them powerfully. It was really well done. Even though you knew that it was coming, it didn't feel cheap. It felt very earned. It was like a very satisfying in the way that reading the same book over and over is satisfying because you know the plot, so you know exactly what's going to hit you. And like that moment, even though I had that inkling that it was how it was going to play out, was still really powerful and really surprising in the best way. So credit to you and Tim for that.
I think a big reveal for me like was with Bert's character when he could turn back time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it was
Good
something that maybe I don't know if you had it planned at all, but like when that whole scene happened and time rewound and then he made the decision to keep it as it was. I don't know. I just think that whole segment was really cool and just I felt like brought the campaign to kind of this cool magical level maybe that we hadn't seen before yet in the campaign. And so like I don't know. That was one of my favorite parts was the rewind episode.
That was
Actually
my favorite part.
That was deeply unplanned.
Yeah.
So the way that rewind episode was written, actually, or the way I had my kind of session notes planned out, was that it was the rewind was just going to kind of happen, or the fake future that they all experienced. So basically, like time was going to be rewound, and then it would be that Flan cast herself off the building, and then Jinx just gives up, and that would have been the end of it. But actually, at the table, I felt the vibe kind of plummet when that happened, and I was like, it doesn't feel right. And so I did, the rest of that was just kind of
Hell yeah.
freewheeling and seeing what we could come up with after that.
And then just the way it happened in like after editing with the music rewind
Yes.
and like it being not super planned is like the coolest part of that, I think,
I
because
agree.
it is probably my hands down favorite moment of the series. Because of just the way it like feels when that happens. I get shivers every time I listen to it. It's very cool.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and Thomas wrote that theme for that scene too.
That's right.
Yeah.
It just fits so well.
Very
It was so
personally
good.
connected.
Yeah.
Just a very Bert scene.
That was one of those moments. That was one of those moments that I think we each had them in the series at some point, especially toward the end, where it felt like we were really our character and our character got to have a really truly themselves moment.
Yeah.
And that was Bert's really truly himself moment where he got to say, no, truth does come first. Truth is truth. And regardless of what powers there are, whatever these other people are trying to tell me is truth or is a lie or what I can or can't do.
Yeah.
Truth is truth, and that matters.
And if I can speak to exactly that for a second, there were a couple times where, I think all of you had at least one moment where it's like it couldn't have been written better the way that it came out naturally. And that's the kind of emergent stuff that always just works out so nicely. A lot of the interactions between Jeannie and Snack towards the end and Idris was just so cinematic the way it played out. And, even Uli coming into her own, there's a moment right towards the end where, somebody asks Uli if she feels ready for it. And then you're like, ha ha ha, no. And then you actually stop and you go, yes. And you kind of like change your mind in the moment. And that was really big.
I feel like the last episode specifically, everyone got a moment like that too, which was like, again, you couldn't have written it. It somehow happened. And that was a two-parter also. We've recorded part 1 and 2 in one night. And just like everything coming together and the roles were perfect. And it just was like very cool.
Even the bad roles were perfect.
Even the bad roles.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Hannah?
If we can get back to how great Bert is. You list on here as the surprises Joe getting a dragon.
Yeah.
And that's something I was really appreciative of with my character. As a knowledge cleric, he got access to Scry, that spell.
Yeah.
And Scry ended up bringing a lot of like really great endings to episodes by having some big like mic drop reveal.
Yeah, it's the ultimate
With
cliffhanger tool.
Joe getting a dragon, seeing Ilya as the like vessel for
that was so
Orzo.
good.
Yeah.
I think there are at least one or two others
Yeah,
too that I'm
definitely,
not thinking
yeah.
of, but
Just
Yeah.
like watching Joe kind of break down.
yeah.
I think, a lot of campaigns, kind of shy away from things like Scry or things that are going to tell you the future in some way.
Right.
But it's like, man, those are such good like foreshadowing opportunities.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff.
So kind of moving on to my personal questions for each of you. And I've just got a little sample platter here. Let's start with Uli, because my first one is more beef than anything. You threw a unique challenge at me by deciding to have 8 NPCs as immediate family members. How did they turn out compared to your first thoughts?
Oh boy. So I think there was a conversation at one point where you were like, what is her backstory? I need her family members. And I was like, all right. And then I wrote 8 of them.
Well, I think as usual, you started by drawing each of them, right?
I had an image in mind for them. I think it took me a while to draw them. But yes, aesthetically, I started with everything like I do. But I didn't really have like a plan for any of them. I just knew that I wanted my family and me to have like kind of a shaky connection.
Yeah.
And I thought it made more sense to have a very large, very well-connected family that I felt like the outsider from. So that's really all I had planned for them. I think I gave you descriptions and like a basic personality for each of them and just kind of let you have at it. So it was very much a surprise hearing you act them out. I think I didn't expect Benth to be, or shit.
Barrett.
Which one? Barrett was the quiet one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Barrett.
I didn't expect Barrett to be the way he was, and I think he's my favorite out of all of them.
Cool.
So
He was very cool. And also, I love that he had that anti-magic
yeah,
flavor to him, which kind of offset Uli's, and it made the reveal of your dad's magic
didn't
history
know.
even more cool because it wasn't just you. It was also, it affected more than just you and
Mhm.
maybe there's more in your family than you thought, that kind of thing.
And that was kind of interesting character development wise because it like kind of solidified my feelings of being the black sheep, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Where I thought that maybe I was just an outsider, maybe I was just imagining it, but the fact that he had access to magic, and Uli still grew up thinking that she was the problem,
Mm-hmm.
was like very interesting,
Yeah.
and I didn't plan that. So
Another big part of Uli for me as a DM was trying to mechanically represent your kind of control arc, or you're gaining control over your magic. So abilities like assimilation, which was a really early one, your rage and surge, which came up a lot. I think that was your kind of bread and butter. The spell sculpting that came a little later, and then finally your Uli patch. How did they play out from your perspective, mechanically and narratively?
yeah, so starting out, I just knew that I wanted her to be kind of very tied to her emotions,
Mhm.
and I hadn't really given thought to how that could develop or change. So when you started throwing the control stuff at me with Rin and like learning how to shield and spell sculpt, I really wasn't expecting it. But it made me start thinking about how I wanted Uli to develop and like where I wanted her to go from there. So it kind of helped me figure out Uli as a character. And then you and I kind of collaborated then from that moment on. Like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if she had a mirror that like let her
That's right.
change her emotions? Because I was at that point like getting really frustrated that I had to be this surly, awful character.
Mhm.
Or the patches, I don't think. Did you come up with that or did I?
I actually initially made your overalls pretty lame in comparison to everybody else's Fey
Okay,
gifts.
yeah.
And then yours kept expanding over time.
And I think I didn't know about the patches. So I think there was a moment where I was like, is that all they do?
Yeah.
'Cause everyone,
It was just some AC or something.
yeah, it was
I think just
fire
fire
resistance.
resistance.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a little AC. And I was like, okay, oh, cool,
It's
I guess.
nothing.
And you were like, just let it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we touch on the mirror really briefly?
Oh, yeah, the mirror that I totally forgot about,
Yeah.
like halfway through the campaign.
Yeah, I'm glad that got dropped.
Yeah.
When you first pulled that out and then it gave you this opportunity to completely change Uli without any what felt like without any consequences, I was like, aww.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted that arc. I wanted that satisfying conclusion for Uli to come into her own gradually. And I definitely understood where you were coming from because you were very frustrated and you were really feeling it. And it was hard for you to find a way to kind of get Uli out of that in a natural way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that those brief moments of using the mirror and kind of feeling how unsatisfying it was
Yeah.
really kicked Uli into high gear as far as like personal growth. And I think it turned out really well. But yeah, so I'm glad the mirror got dropped.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
it was
you know,
really hard.
It was also right before we went to Hogwild because that was in Tildry. I think when you got
Yeah.
the mirror around then, and then we went to Hogwild next. So it was almost like emotional training wheels for Uli. And so you were like, I'm a different emotion today from this mirror. And then you used it a little bit after that, but then like really after your time with
Yeah.
your family in Hogwild, like you were your own like character, comfortable. I felt like Maggie with Uli's emotions, and like
Yeah.
I think it's because Uli was getting more comfortable, right? And so like I don't know, I feel like it was the training wheels were able to come off,
Yeah.
which aka was the mirror.
Yeah. And I can touch on that a little later because there was a lot. It wasn't just character growth. There was a lot of Maggie growth.
Aw.
So it was a lot of me in the character and like, yeah. So
We were talking a little bit ago about how everybody had a great character moment that shined in the last episode, and the moment with Uli splitting into her double or whatever and fully accepting that was really
I
good.
think
Yep.
I legitimately cried.
Aw.
Yeah.
So yeah. Ugh, guys, I'm gonna cry again.
Snack. It is your turn.
Hit me.
Eldritch Blast. Your relationship with Jeannie, in a lot of ways, not so discreetly, was a direct line to the DM, and that definitely was not by accident. How do you feel that affected the game, and how did it affect Snack's emotional growth and his journey?
Yeah, Snack as a character, I think, trusted Genie implicitly ever since he committed to making Snack a dragon. So from the character perspective, that it was really unwavering. For me as a player, I left a lot open to the GM, Tim, on what Genie actually is, and it wasn't decided whether or not Genie was actually benevolent for a long time. And I think that just became apparent as those characters developed. But I was fully prepared for Genie to be manipulating Snack to be doing something like that. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until later into the game where Genie was kind of almost a lifeline to the DM for hints or on what we should do. I suppose we did do that a bit with how to handle curses because Genie knew how to handle those. But yeah, I guess I didn't see it that way, but I definitely used it in those situations where me and Snack didn't know how to handle the curse climax situation.
Yeah. I just like having that option of being able to kind of communicate in a way that's still at the table and still in the recording, and it's not all right, let's back up, guys. What's going on here? To keep it all kind of in the scene.
Yeah.
So the other part of Snack that we'd love to joke about is that Snack was a powerhouse, especially in the late game. What was it like to manage that kind of lethal force in a narrative campaign? Because there's a lot you could have done.
Yeah. I think this is what is kind of there's just an inherent benefit of putting microphones in front of ourselves, trying to make something into listenable and interesting. There's a lot of incentives not to just cheese things. I got the gavel, which allows me to summon anyone with the Tildry tattoo. I think that's the best example to use where what I would say is Snack is almost like a personification of that Fae bargain or the Genie bargain where you can wish for something, but you're not going to quite get what you actually want.
Yeah.
So every time a situation I would use something like the gavel, it would be did you really want to ask Snack to do that? Because this is what you're getting.
And I felt like that's why it was so safe to give Snack something that's such an obvious mechanical advantage because he wouldn't have the wherewithal to employ it in that cheesy way.
Yeah. So it was hard to use these things in a fun way. But it was hard because I didn't want to abuse it. Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be interesting if I did use it. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm constantly thinking I could fix this because I could have done blah blah blah. But I didn't want to cheese that situation. I wanted to think like Snack did, which is just chaos. So,
sure.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for John was the exact right person to hand this to hand that OP-ness to.
John's penis. Pee pee poo poo. Just saying, Tara.
Did we cut John's penis, by the way?
No, we kept it in.
No, but what I'm trying to say is John as a player is so incredibly thoughtful and is thinking about the campaign, is thinking about the story, is thinking about the listener experience, and wants to be constantly improving those things. So having you play the character that has all of these overpowered crazy abilities, but wouldn't be able to figure out how to use them because he's a big dumb baby. Of course, that's so perfect because you would never go to those extremes. You would always make the choice that makes the most sense for the character, for the story, and all of that. So I think that was just really well done.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the other games and campaigns I played with John is usually more of a support based and John's also a very good player at making other people at the table look good or empowering them to do their thing. Mm-hmm. So it was a fun twist to give Snack every spell in the
every
book.
Toy.
Snack was very
every
unexpected.
toy.
Did you ever feel like you were pulling punches? I can see I can see the motivation to not want to cheese things to make it listenable, but did you feel like you were ever really holding back with what was available to you?
No, not really. Because I was very much in the mindset of Snack, which you'd have to hold his head and make him look at something to do the optimal thing.
Sure.
So I never felt like I had to do that.
Yeah, I like that. Tibio.
Uh-oh.
Tibio had a heavy storyline, probably more than anybody else. And it centered a lot around a literal duty and obligation to oversee the gate in La Porte de la Nuit. How did his obligations affect the way that you played the character?
Tibio started out as a very, I don't know, I wanted him to feel like a kid. I wanted him to feel very young, and I wanted him to feel like he had a certain energy and exuberance and naivete,
Yeah.
even in his interactions with the world. But I also wanted to pull on those ideas of duty and obligation and loss, really, because he was looking for his parents. He didn't know where they were, and he felt like he was losing his childhood. He felt like he was losing his family. He felt like he couldn't do anything right, but he still had that like cheerfulness. So I think that a lot of that weight was something that was in the back of my mind in every scene. So even when he's very excited, like he turns around and sees a raven, you know, like those moments really affected every moment that I played him. And I thought about it a lot because I wanted him to feel like a deep character and not just very simple. I think a lot of that was pulled from, you know, my own childhood, or like feeling like I wanted to portray that kid that had to grow up too fast.
Sure. Yeah.
So there was a lot of that influencing where he came from. And
there was that in kind of a literal sense too, with some of his aging and things he had to take on.
Yeah, and like thinking that, you know, this was going to be all a big adventure, and then having real consequences land on him and on his friends, and trying to navigate that as someone who is very young but feels the impending pressure of his life that he left behind.
And I like with Tibio too that kind of going along with what you had just said about like where Tibio went right after this adventure, but in a lot of ways, you know, Tibio understood the duties that were set upon him, but he didn't necessarily agree with every aspect of it and sought to change some of those things. Like, you know, he didn't have the kind of like reverent heaviness that your parents probably did with that sort of job. Like you said,
for sure.
you know, you wanted to like connect more with the world and open up memoir to the world more, and you know, kind of like take Wakanda out of Wakanda. And like, show it around.
No, I totally get what you mean. No, and like the contrast between Sakra and how she was looking at this holy place, and she was this little old lady who was literally like sitting in this doorway trying to hold everything back, and Tibio was like, well, let's just go.
Yeah.
Let's just fucking go. Why can't we work with other people? Why does it have to be me by myself?
Yeah.
Like, I get that there's some sort of, you know, like Tibio understood that he was kind of a conduit for all of this power, and that it was a cultural thing to some extent. But he also knew that it wasn't just him. It wasn't just affecting his people, his village, his family.
Yeah.
It was affecting the entire world. So connecting with all of these other people that saw the same issue from a different perspective really made it global for him. And I think that's another thing that kind of what this campaign became about for me was different perspectives on the shared issue.
Yeah.
And understanding other perspectives, knowing that the way you see the world isn't right. It's just one way.
And we saw that quite a bit. There were a lot of disagreements within the party, you know, Snack being a very straightforward, kind of bloodlusty in the beginning, and then throughout, you know, Tibio was always very anti-violent, which is sometimes difficult in a D&D campaign.
Yeah, it was very fun to play those moments. I think with Tibio and Bert, those moments with Bert's parents were really fun. They were hard for Tibio, fun for Tara.
Yeah.
Yep. That tension felt very like organic, and like, you know, obviously it's like, you know, Bert understands the rules around it, but he's not part of that culture, and so he's like, yeah, I get it, like they're liches, it's whatever,
Yeah. Well, and it was so fun too, because that moment was toward the end of an episode, I think, of like Tibio being really upset and Bert being like, what the fuck? Like Bert being like, how dare you? Those are my parents, and Tibio being like, how dare you? They're liches. And then that moment was so like full of tension for Tibio and Bert, and then episode ends, we're at the table, and me and Thomas are like, "Hey,
You're not actually mad, right?
Yeah.
hey."
Meanwhile, Tibio's at the bar in Lamplight going, I don't want to kill his pal.
Yeah. And it was a joy to play those moments, and it is a really interesting dynamic in my own mind because Tibio was very upset, and Tara's like,
It is very fun when we can disagree at the table as characters
Yeah.
when we know that we're all good.
And it makes sense. It made perfect sense for Bert to be upset and made perfect sense for Tibby to be upset. So it was just fun.
With that, Bert, I felt at times that Bert was the odd duck in that he didn't have arcane spellcasting and technically wasn't a curse breaker, even though everybody else was. Do you think that makes Bert an observer, merely chronicling the adventures of the curse breakers, or does Bert consider himself an equal part of the party?
I think the answer to that is both. That Bert does know he's, fully part of the party, part of the curse breakers, but he definitely always felt a little bit of an outsider, or like he was missing out, or some jealousy maybe of what the other curse breakers could do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that difference you made with the spellcasting, how Bert was the only divine spellcaster,
Mm-hmm.
that was really interesting to make that kind of difference between him and the other characters. Also because clerics, it turns out, are like pretty good inherent curse breakers.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Like I literally have a spell called
Curse.
Remove
Yeah,
Curse.
yeah.
Yep.
And that also led to a great moment in the last episode where he gets off a clutch, dispel evil and good.
That's right.
To curse break the big bad.
Yep.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that moment. I mean, just popping off after Holly becomes a literal giant crystal. Uli accepts herself for who she is. Snack is the most dragon of all dragons. And then that exchange of Bert and Tibio being there in that last moment with Ilya, with Moja, and having those pure moments of themselves
Yeah.
was so just freaking cool.
It was
I was so
very cool.
happy about that moment. And Bert knowing that he was a curse breaker in the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You did it.
You did it. You broke the curse.
Yeah. That final exchange with, Bert becoming a curse breaker and Tibio choosing life over death, I think was like the whole campaign in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm not trying to steal Bert's moment, but when I said that I turned to Ilya and chose to bar her from the underworld, your jaw, Tim,
Yeah.
dropped.
I was shocked too. Yeah.
I
That
was
was a
like,
good move.
I did it.
One of my prouder moments for me personally was when we were back in Tildry and Snack was in a whole mess of farewell trouble
yeah.
or whatever.
Oh man.
Where like he had spent all our money
Yes.
on
Yeah.
the tower or whatever. And then leading Snack toward being like, oh, this was actually an altruistic thing you did, so you should become a curse breaker now.
Mhm.
Like that
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
cool moment too, to
And being
bring
able
Snack into the fold or
to,
whatever.
and literally do it yourself too
Mhm.
with the
Yeah.
tattoo. Yeah.
You made curse breakers.
You were like the best analogy I can think of is like Giles from Buffy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I
That
could see a
works.
little bit.
Yeah, I felt like Bert had
He
a lot
liked
of
books.
you had a lot of really cool role play moments that had a big plot impact.
Mhm.
I think where you talked things through with different characters
Yeah.
and helped them figure things out or have moments of truth and clarity, true to Bert.
Even if you weren't necessarily doing the heavy hitting or the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
the big flashy stuff, you were definitely like the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And one of the earliest, I would say, at really doing the character work. If we rewind all the way back to Lamplight at the Tangled Jib, there's a moment where Henry Muldrift is describing his wife transforming, and Snack is getting excited because he's like,
yeah.
"Oh, there's a way to transform into a scaly creature. Sign me up!" But then at the same time, Holly was insistent on describing her character as getting really upset and starting to cry
Yeah.
and just wanting to go to bed. And then Bert catches her on her way up the stairs and like, "Holly, is everything okay?" And she's like, "Oh, I just need to go to bed, whatever." And she kind of plays it off. But that was Bert like really digging into and noticing these little choices at the table and then addressing it in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was about Ivy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I didn't know at the time.
Right. Yeah. Along with that, Thomas, there's also a lot of pressure as the primary support or healer in a party. I also intentionally gave you a lot of tools like Brain Gore that tempted you away from optimal healing choices. How did you make your choices in combat? Where did you draw the line between playing triage and getting your own glory?
Well, I really liked this turn for Bert. This kind of started with, I guess it was in Hogwild, right, where Ilya drank the cursed flask and died.
Aviri, yeah.
Whatever. Whichever.
Yeah.
One of
Very-
his
Wait,
sisters.
which one was it?
The youngest one, Viri.
Veery.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Whatever. Yeah, anyway, and then like Snack went and got revenge on that guy.
Oof.
And I think Bert realized then that he like kind of felt powerless and was jealous of Snack for being able to take matters into his own hands. And that's he got Brain Gore soon after and started doing more martial combat stuff.
That's right. And I think right after you left Hogwild is when you we did that tornado thing trying to take over the wagon.
Yeah.
And I did that little aside with Bert taking his shirt off and pinning down the caravan.
Yeah, so and related to the last question too, that was always Bert was kind of wrestling that line of like sitting back, being an observer and a fly in the wall versus like actually being involved and affecting change and stuff.
Mhm. I mean, you were also put in situations where, you were, let's take Joe and the Dragon, for instance, where you and Emery became the main force against that thing.
Yeah.
And kind of left to your own devices on the end of the bridge. And so, it really wasn't a situation where you were in any position to be the primary healer, being just the two of you. I think that was a good example of Bert having to make every hard choice all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And you clearly could take it on your own. Like you had the skills to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that you didn't for the most part. I mean, you definitely did, but it was definitely letting everyone else kind of take over. I think there was one point when we were fighting the bone dragon where you like stepped back and you like stood out of the combat. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I feel like you made some strategic choices where like I can do better things that aren't combat. I'm just gonna step back.
Yeah, I definitely, set out to be more support and Healy and stuff, and so it's cool to kind of have that change for story reasons to include more offensive spells and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Holly.
It's me.
Holly made some incredible technical plays throughout the campaign that had some of the biggest damage turns, even outpacing Snack at some point. How did you make your choices for spells and building Holly as a witch?
She's a witch. Yeah. Holly as a witch. She's a witch? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I think at first this campaign spanned a year and a half or more for our real lives. And at first, I think I was just choosing based on kind of what sounded cool for spell choices. And, you're a little more limited kind of when you're a low-level wizard. And as time went on, I realized I'm really bad at picking out spells that are useful.
Okay.
So what I actually did is I went on the internet and I was like, what are good D&D wizard spells? And then
It's a good way to get answers.
hey, I am a researcher, okay? Because I read them all and, I was like, I just don't know what's going to be the most useful or have like what does this actually look like? I was having a hard time reading the spell and then figuring out what that would actually play out as, either in combat or not. And so reading, I found a website that like ranked wizard spells, and I think they did it for all the spells, but it like had like a 5-star rating system of like, and then it kind of explained instances in a campaign when this would come up, like outside of combat even. And so that really helped me like understand the usefulness and like how to use spells. And so, for anyone who is new to D&D or just feels like they have also a hard time figuring out what spells are good and like have the most, can be applied in a lot of different ways, that really helped me. And I can't remember the name of the website, but it was free. It was just on some random website on the internet. But so I kind of did research, and then I feel like after I did that, I think it was like what level did we end at?
12.
I think.
12. I think it must have been around level 6 or 7. So like right about halfway through, that's when that happened. And all of the sudden my spells got really good.
Yeah.
I think there was a noticeable shift in the way you played also, where it felt like you just finally got it.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh my God, I'm a witch.
Yeah. So it was the player, definitely more Hannah development. I felt like obviously Holly was growing as a witch in power.
Yeah.
I think she was always really capable, but I think, just learning new spells on the side, and like she would try to, like I know in Tibio's Town, what the memoir. Sorry, I was like not hog. I kept looking at you and saying it's not Hogwild. In memoir, I know like she tried to seek out the library and spend time like reading about spells. So I think I was trying to like weave it in more to the story too, of her like searching out different spells. Hogwild doesn't have a library, but she would have looked there too. No, I'm just kidding.
Hogwild got it.
They got Reader's Digest.
Yeah. They have Reader's Digest by the outhouse.
Yeah.
Uncle John's
Magazine.
outhouse reader.
Humor in uniform.
So it was definitely just Hannah like getting better at D&D kind of, and I hadn't ever played I don't think I played a wizard before, so learning the spells and their use was definitely a big part of that.
Well, that's kind of a good example of figuring out what kind of player you are.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to figure out who your character is. It's another thing to figure out who you are as a player and how to best facilitate your play style and make sure that it's true to you and true to your character. So I think that's really cool that you were able to find a way that worked for you. And it makes sense that you had to do some research.
Yeah, had to read some
Made
books.
sense.
But on the flip side, you were probably the best of us at like aesthetically describing what you were doing, and like while you were role playing, technical stuff aside, I just feel like I always knew exactly what you're doing because you were just so good at.
Yeah, there were a couple times where you described a scene really thoroughly that it felt like the first time you did it, I was like, well, who's the DM here? And then I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Who is the DM?
No, and then, but that, I mean, I changed my play style because of that too. I was watching, actual play stuff. I was watching Critical Role and D20 and blah, blah, blah. But I took some of that into account, and as Tibio started, or as Tara, I guess, started describing Tibio's spells as he was casting them a little more clearly and using, like, he throws his arms out and shoots purple smoke out of his fingers and shit like that. Like, I was doing more of that because of how enjoyable I found it as a listener to have those visual moments, because I'm not a very visual person. So having those descriptions and having those just little moments, not extensive, but little moments of, what your character is doing and what you think they would be doing in those moments was really cool.
I feel like typically we've never really focused on the reagents and stuff and ingredients for spells, but you've like very specifically made sure there was a crystal involved.
There's a crystal for everything.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Even early on,
love crystals.
Even early on, Holly was using like ocean water to cast Armor of Agathis and stuff like that. Yeah.
Armor of Agatha.
Agatha. The spell with a million names.
Yeah. I do just want to give a shout out to one of my favorite Holly moments of when she was in the, oh my gosh, help me out here. It's the Four Corners like trade shop when we went back. When
the cross post.
The cross post. I wanted to confuse it with 4L juice bar. Sorry. No, the cross post. And she went to follow Snack, and then Moja showed up as a curse, and Holly like scared him away with her how like powerful her role was. And I think
because you crit on a curse break.
Yeah. And so like that moment was like such genuine joy for me as a player, because I just felt like I did something myself, and I like helped Snack, and I took out the bad guy. Like it was just like a really fun, like super witchy moment. And I had another one later in the campaign too, but that was the first one that like
Mhm.
I'm so cool.
That was another Holly clip moment.
Yes.
Where I think
My
you did like
cackle.
a witch
A cackle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
man. So
that
good.
that whole interaction with Snack going back to cross post, teleporting out with Gene's wish was
that was wild.
yes, that was out in the far reaches where I had no preparation, no notes around that.
You're like, I guess
That
We're
was
all like,
dark.
what is
Yeah.
gonna happen?
That
Like
was-
that was like kind of fearful for
Yeah.
all of us at the table. I think a little bit of like, did Snack go off the deep end? Is he gonna like
Yeah.
something terrible gonna happen here? Like I don't know, or like is he gonna become just a cold blood murderer and we're gonna like
Yeah.
For the next part of this, we actually received some questions from our listeners, which
Yay.
is delightful. I super appreciate everyone who sent in stuff.
And we're not related to all of them.
No,
So
yeah, isn't that incredible? It's true. We are not directly related to all the people that sent in answers.
Oh, speaking of listeners, thank you to the 2 people that actually donated actual real money.
Yeah,
to us?
let's spend just a second talking about that. We set up a Buy Me a Coffee page at buymeacoffee.com/PBOP, and we didn't really advertise it that much aside from putting it at the end of a few episodes. And some benevolent people out there that listen to our show that we swear to God we don't know donated money to us.
thank you.
That sounds so suspicious. We legitimately do not know.
And it really helped. We've been doing
Actual
awesome
strangers.
stuff to
Yeah.
help the podcast.
And we put it directly to use. We are now sitting in our
New studio.
new studio
Yeah. that we built ourselves.
that we did build ourselves. Yes,
in a house that one of us already owned.
But
So-
it is like decked out.
a couple asterisks on there, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning. It's totally possible we wouldn't have decided to do campaign 2 without those, just because it really just let us believe in ourselves. It wasn't really. It's not about the money we spent.
Yeah.
Way more than we got.
It didn't cover the
Yeah.
studio.
But
Yeah.
it's really, it's been
It-
very cool,
Yeah.
like realizing we have listeners that we don't know about.
Yeah. Shout out to whoever in Brazil is just binging our shit.
Yeah.
Love
And-
you. Love you in particular.
We still are at a point where we have a very keen idea of where we're being listened to and, who can see us. We've made some Reddit posts, but we keep an eye on our analytics, and it warms my heart to see people that we don't know going through our entire show. And
Yeah.
we'd love to hear from anybody out there.
And to be clear, we don't know exactly where you are.
No, yeah.
We just
No doxing. or
we just
anything.
know what country you might be in, and we don't know how many of
Or which
you
one
are.
your
there
VPN
are.
is going through.
Yeah, right.
We sound so sus.
Okay, everyone is being really creepy. Basically, we just want to say we feel,
We know where you live.
Oh my
We're
God.
coming for you. Season 2.
We're streaming directly into your Googles.
We're already there. I was just going to say, I think what everyone's getting at is it's really inspiring to have people be inspired by us in a small way. So thank you
Yeah.
very much.
And just really gratifying.
Yeah.
It's like astounding. We did this for fun. We decided to put it online because we had recorded it and we wanted to see if we could.
And we thought we sounded good.
ignore the first 6 episodes.
Yeah.
But like we did it. We did an entire campaign, and it's like crazy that there are people we didn't even tell about this, like listening to every episode, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, big shout out to everybody who sent in questions. So just starting to the questions for everybody. Where did the music come from for everything?
Our souls.
I think it would be good to focus on the main theme.
Yeah.
So the bass line was actually something Tim wrote originally in FL Studios.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that first, and then I'll?
Yeah, I'm pretty amateur at music stuff, so there's not really a process behind it. More just knowing that I had a resource like John and Thomas that could polish it into something that sounded full and beautiful. Starting with the starter assets of FL Studio, I could sit there and pluck away with whatever notes sounded good together. And then I think John recognized, like we can really turn this into something. And there's even a first draft of the theme song that sounds pretty island.
It's
Yeah.
jungle mode.
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that
It's
one.
Donkey Kong. It's straight Donkey Kong.
It is.
Yeah. So I had a very very limited instrument pack, and anyone that does limited instrument packs may know your selections are going to be really weird stuff
Yep.
to work with. So I had some real drums, but they were Yeah, they were island
Was this your bongos?
Yeah, pretty much.
talking drum.
Yeah.
So I think we should like play a clip of it there.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yes.
yeah.
So good.
Yeah, so at some point that should get faded in, but basically, so that was what I came back with. I'll also say like I had a week off because it was like the spring break week for me with work and stuff, and I spent so much time like playing it, going sit in the living room, listen to it on sound, like the sound bar,
Making
on my
me
phone,
listening to
through
it.
headphones, like trying to learn how to like make something sound decent, like in a general sense. So a lot of that energy and time was just me like being very neurotic about trying to learn how to basically mix that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the island theme came out first, and we were like, this is not quite right.
Oh, it was so funny. Though. No, it was so good because you were like working on this for hours and hours and hours and like multiple days. And you're like, Tara, it's done. Do you want to come listen to it? And I was like, I've been hearing it. You're not alone in this apartment. But I went and listened to it, and I was like, it's great. It sounds very jungle theme. It sounds like Donkey Kong is bouncing level to level, chasing that little Mario guy.
Yeah.
Video game stuff.
So the final one, yeah, was definitely tweaked a lot. And I think basically like Tim's bass line was very like just moving forward and just kind of like had a good movement to it. And I think for this campaign, we wanted it to be fun and like not super like heavy feeling for the theme. And I think that worked out really well overall. It definitely matched the vibe for the majority of the campaign. And obviously when we get to Vindorn, things get more serious then.
Yeah.
But yeah, the music, I mean, it's all coming from us. Like, yeah. And, you know, we recorded real people singing for Tibio's theme.
Mm-hmm. And
You know,
Hog Wild.
And
And
Hog Wild too.
Hogwild.
That was us
Oh,
being idiots in the
Hogwild.
apartment.
That was
like,
Recording
beautiful.
Hog Wild was a really fun couple
It was
of
very
days.
fun.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
you three, right? Or was Tara involved?
Tar was.
I
in
was
there, yeah.
present.
Okay.
yeah. So
I was barely
But
involved.
literally, you know, it's all us whooping and hollering in the back of the Hog Wild
Hog
theme song.
Wild.
Yeah.
And me in the living room trying to keep Lyra quiet.
And then
No, it was so good. To
for
hear
anyone who
them.
didn't recognize, in Tibio's theme song, that's all Tara, including the quiet French whispers, and then
The choral stuff.
that also got put into the Vindorn theme song. But the vocal solo in that.
that was Tara's the vocals, and then we actually had a couple other people come in to
Oh, that's
do
right.
the
Yeah.
other voices. So.
Special guest Allie J, I think, was in there too. Is
Yep.
that right?
Allie and Andy.
Andy,
That's
yeah.
Andy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they both did fantastic work. And John built out all the harmonies. Like the melody was initially me, and I had the great opportunity to sing those little solo bits. But yeah, it was all John doing the writing on it.
And like we said, it was Thomas who came up with the theme for Bird's Rewind that we used a couple times. And I think it's really cool that we've got like, you know, not just multi-talented people at this table, but you know, people who overlap a lot with their passions and interests. And it just, I don't know, gives us a lot of reach.
Yeah.
Well, and just really quick, Uli's little bit of music.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very,
That was
very
very
cool.
good, yeah.
And that
Very
one did
cool.
come out of me. Yeah,
Yeah, that was you. And that was very cool. And it was unexpected, and it was placed really well in the episodes where it landed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say that for the Vindorn theme,
Yes.
adding Tibio's little bit at the end there was a shock to me and was honestly really flattering.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, it's such a good nod to like, let's finish the fight kind of idea.
Well,
Yeah.
and the effects that John put on it to like reverse parts of it
Yeah.
and have that guitar go like at the end was so fucking cool.
Yeah.
The first time you played it for me, I was like, I'm dead. I'm just
Yeah.
dead now.
I was like wailing on the whammy bar. I was like, I hope I don't break this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to record it a couple times. But actually, it was for the Vindorn theme. If you listen to the dirty synth sound, that was actually the same melody, and that was Thomas's idea to stick that on top.
So cool.
Because, yeah, so that was definitely a full collab. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. I was just gonna say, Tim mentioned that like everyone at the table is super talented in different ways, and like a lot of the guys do music things, and Tar can sing and speak French apparently. And I also wanted to shout out to Maggie, our resident artist.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because it's not in the episodes, but all of the art that you may see around either on YouTube or on Instagram mainly is where she posts a lot of the artwork. I'm trying to think, is there anywhere else that it would be out? I mean,
Facebook, somewhat.
And then like on the Apple Podcast or your little podcast, the
Oh, the
graphics,
logo.
the logos,
That
all
was
of that Maggie made. So check out the Instagram though. I think you can really see the cool character art and like
Well,
all
it
the
helped
different
us
things.
visualize who
Yeah.
our characters were because we had kind
It's
of
big.
we came to Maggie with kind of vague descriptions. I know I was very flippant about mine. I was like, Tibio is a gnome in a skeleton in a trench cloak.
It's a Belton gnome.
Yeah. And yeah, Maggie really brought our characters to life in a new way that helped us kind of take those visualizations in to the game.
So check out the Instagram, Maggie's Amazing Artiste.
Mhm.
And I feel like our campaign wouldn't be the same without her art.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks Maggie.
I can't handle this.
The same goes for our Reddit account. If any Redditors have seen us posting somewhat infrequently, but every now and then in the D&D subreddit, we'll throw up an episode announcement or something, and that main cover was done by Maggie as well, all the character art on there.
And Tim does maps.
That's right. I
Yeah.
did a couple maps for this one, too.
Yeah.
I'd like to get into more of that. It's just a little time consuming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're pretty cool, I guess.
I guess. We do okay. Another or the same listener would like to know what if we have a favorite episode personally. And I think I threw this out to Maggie the other day. I think Pride and Prestidigitation. Wow.
Pride and Prestidigitation
Yes.
is my favorite.
Thank you. That might be my favorite. I can't really make up my mind, but
Why is it your favorite?
So that was another two-parter episode. Well, we recorded 2 episodes in one evening. And it was just like the first time that everything felt perfectly on. Everybody was on in character. It was just like really funny. Everybody had a moment where there was like a funny quip or like a silly moment. I don't know. It was just like really cool. And I love episodes where there's awkward Dave stuff.
yeah.
I just feel like it's perfect.
Man, that's so good. The first couple times that Tim, honestly, the like accidental, not accidental interruptions were choice.
Yeah.
Like the first couple times that you did it, Maggie had literal like panic moments of like, no.
I think I was like
Because you
blushing
didn't realize,
and sweating.
yeah. It felt like the first time Tim did it, you didn't realize it was on purpose.
Yeah.
And Tim was like really cued in and clued in to have those moments be as awkward as possible. And it was perfect.
Yeah.
Knew when I was going to speak. And
Yeah.
like,
It was
perfect.
it was so well
It was
done.
it's like down to the nanosecond. Like,
yeah, it was
And
just
for
like
me-
it was so hard being at the table because I
know.
have such an anti-cringe humor, like so my body was like trying to escape
Yeah.
the room.
I think we both,
Just
our
like,
souls left
my
our body.
spine.
And that is specifically like the worst kind of social interaction that I have frequently in my life. So it was just there at the table.
And it just came through beautifully because all of that angst and like cringe that you had as a player channeled directly into Uli in the most perfect, beautiful way.
Yeah.
It was just so good. It was so joyful and funny and horrible.
uncomfortable as hell
Yeah.
to record, but so good after
oh
the fact.
man, so good.
My favorite episode was Oops All Kobolds.
Oh my God. Yes.
God.
That was pretty great.
I had the most fun. As we were like getting ready and gearing up to go fight the dragon and like, you know, that was terrorizing the land and stuff. And I was like, Maggie said something just at the table, that was, like as we were playing, and she was like, "Oh, I can make everyone. What is it? What's the spell?"
It was seeming.
Seeming.
I can cast seeming.
And I was like, in my head, I'm like, we can all become kobolds.
Yeah.
and then I was like, that'll be amazing. And so I really pushed
So good.
for it in character. And then I just went crazy with it because it's like Holly was like free to be just a crazy character. And as a
Snatch.
player, Snatch, yeah, I was like, it was so much fun. So
There's a very specific, delicious novelty to like putting everybody in the same costume whenever you change
Yes.
locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so mine's a little controversial. I honestly think it's episode 1, Fishy played at Lamplight.
Really?
And the reason
Episode 1.
there's a lot of reasons for that.
it's the only episode where Snack can't be in the sun, and we never mention it.
Yeah. You never come back to it.
Like,
Talk about loopholes.
yeah.
Sorry.
He got tan. But no, like I think like just for I gotta like give the visual of this. Like this was our first time doing it, and it was kind of like me, like and Tim helping like us, kind of like, hey, we should do this really weird thing. Like let's record ourselves and post it. And and so like we were using like a mixer. We didn't have enough mics, so we're literally like waiting for someone to have room to speak, and then like moving in so that person can talk on the mic. So there's a ton of awkward timing.
We were wearing masks.
We were wearing masks.
This is mid-COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Mid-COVID. And I think with all of that, like, it's still like there's something so like genuine. That's the episode I've listened to the most, and there's a lot bad about it.
Yeah.
And it's cringy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was good enough for us to keep doing it. So yeah.
That's true.
It was a really good like plot hook too. Like it was very clear like what we were trying to do. So yeah.
Mine probably is the butterfly
Oh,
effect.
yeah.
I love the way it turned out. It wasn't necessarily my favorite to play
Sure.
because behind the scenes,
Stressful.
all of us, whenever we had a very character-centric episode for our character, like you just become paralyzed in the moment and take 5 minutes to make every single decision. And luckily we can cut all that out and it sounds awesome in the final product. But
I should take a moment to talk to other people who are just starting out with D&D. There are some people, even old coworkers of mine, that have reached out and said like, hey, because of your podcast, like I've developed like an interest in trying this at least. To those people, we cut a lot, 50% of what we record.
So much. Oh my God.
Just
I
tangents.
take forever to talk.
That's the biggest thing. It's like, it's the pauses between stuff. We take time to come up with our responses. We don't pre-write things, and we don't like discuss it and then do it kind of thing. But we do cut out our pauses. So we're not voice actors.
And like credit where credit is due, we have also improved a lot.
For sure.
So
absolutely.
the early episodes we were cutting a fuck ton.
Yep.
These last few episodes, it definitely wasn't as much.
That's very true.
Yeah, we've gotten tighter on our turns. We've gotten better at our role play in the moment, stuff like that. But it's a gradual process, isn't it? It's a learning process.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is learning at the table when to jump in and not, because I think at first it was hard to figure out when you're recording something. This isn't for normal play D&D, but when you're recording, you have to be kind of really conscious of when is someone done, or like when is it appropriate to all be talking at once, and we kind of like learn those nuances about each other in a recording sense as the campaign went on. So
Yeah, definitely.
And it feels it's better to make the right choice about what you're going to say, especially if you're doing it for other people, because it's better storytelling. So I think we learned that it was okay to take time and make sure that it was what we wanted. And sometimes we would stop and be like, no, I want to take that again. Like I don't like how that turned out. Or
That did happen a couple times.
Yeah.
Only thing I'd add to this is like, this is a performative version of D&D, and it's not how I started out playing it at all. And I don't even know if I would keep doing it if my first time playing was like the podcast version. Because like, like when you are playing with friends, like you don't need to emulate like Critical Role or anything like what we do. It is like, whatever is fun for you. And sometimes it's like treating it like a video game is what is fun, and like it's in-joke stuff, and that's totally fine. That's legal. That's authentic D&D.
And that's
too.
I came up much the same way, where it's we're resting on our mechanics, we're eating, talking, and we usually play for 4 or 5 hours at a time, rather than trying to cut these into hour episodes and cinematic quality and all that stuff.
I think
For sure.
for me, it's been half. Like I think we've been recording for about half of as long as I've been playing with you.
Sure.
But not ever for a podcast. So this has been a totally different experience as well. It's less casual, but it's also still very casual at the same time, because we know that we can edit things if we need to.
wait, did we record the last one?
No, we didn't record
Okay,
that
I
one.
was gonna say
The
Nin.
Poppy.
Oh.
Not Poppy.
We
Oh
didn't-
my God.
We didn't record all
It's
of
good
it.
that you're making it a mistake in that way, though.
Yeah. Instead of
Right?
Pepper,
Yes. Pepper.
No, just say it wrong. It's fine. Poppy
Okay.
is correct now.
It's Poppy.
Okay, I don't think I have a favorite episode because a lot of them were so enjoyable that I just really. But I do have a couple favorite moments for Tibio in particular. One of them was I'll just do one of them. The moment that I actually got to sing Tibio's song
Yeah.
in that fucking cave in Memoir
Yeah.
was so hard, but so satisfying.
Because you also didn't know that was coming, and it was the DM saying, "Sing now."
No idea. Yeah, I was like,
So
as soon as
nervous.
I like, well, sorry. As soon as we recorded the theme and we put it in the show, I was like, I'm gonna have to sing it at some point. I gotta sing it at some point. It's gotta, because we've been talking about music affecting Moja and blah 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 blah. There's got to be a reason to do it. And I was like, I don't know when it's gonna be. And then it took me. I was shaking so bad that I had to take like 2 minutes to be like, I just need to breathe for a second. And then I just slowly was like, okay. And then I went for it. But yeah, it turned out really good. But it was a very scary moment.
Well, you did great and
Yeah.
sounded beautiful.
Thanks.
Any other big tib breakthroughs?
Really, no favorite episode that you can think of? 'Cause you
Okay,
like too many?
I do love the Tildry Bert's trial shit.
Yes.
I was gonna
I
say
love
that as my
that.
second follow-up favorite episodes were
I
the
love
trials.
those. Yeah,
the 2 episodes.
Those were very fun, and just like, the flower strangers were really absurd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that whole arc. It was very very fun,
Polymorphin.
very urban. It felt very like we're in the big city.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little background on some of the DM decisions there. I constantly played around Tibio's unwillingness to kill humans.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so I would set you guys up with like, just kind of like if you ever watch Power Rangers, like putty people.
Yep.
Sure.
It's just some non-person.
They're not people.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and
I
even
think
then
you mean
Tibio
flower
was
strangers.
like, yeah. Even then Tibio was like, "Are you a person?"
Exactly. So concerned that there's life on it. Yeah.
Do you have a soul? I can't hurt you.
I don't want to hurt you. Are you okay?
Tibio, that's a
I tried-
fence post.
Literally, I cast blindness on this fucking bag of flour.
And then Snack in the background of that episode is like killing ravens behind it.
Yeah. I mean,
Just like ripping their heads off.
and we'll have another chance to talk about this too, but like Snack's, development away from violence, and then he had a little kind of slip up, towards the end there against Grey Gut, who was his kind of antagonist when he was young.
yeah.
The second Grey Gut was kind of incapacitated, Snack jumped on him and stabbed him to death.
Oh yeah.
And that was Snack's last little departure into abject violence, I think. But it was also sort of closing, his former arc, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, one last kill and then I'm done.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. I'm done now.
Okay.
Hey Tim, we got a question. How do you world build? How do you build worlds?
Yeah. I probably did the least world building for Cursebreaker than I've done for any campaign, especially in the beginning. I was so excited to get this thing rolling that I just wanted to like dive into it, not think about it, not be too precious about it, and just start recording something. And that's what we did. So I did the Nightmare Wizard arc, and then as we went, I was only building the tracks out so far ahead of me. And I think that worked out the best because I could really respond to everything that came up with everyone.
Yeah.
And like at the end of every night, I could get a little bit of feedback from you guys and see where it was going to go next and maybe text you guys in between sessions. But I think, every strategy is valid, but I really dig this not figuring it out thing.
Yeah, it never felt lacking or anything like that. Like it seemed fully fleshed out. Like Hannah mentioned earlier, like the meeting the old Cursebreaker and the other travelers on the road really made it feel like a big cohesive world.
Yeah, and it was so I tried really hard to stop introducing new plot elements like roughly halfway through the campaign so I could start like capitalizing on those ideas that I had already set up. So it's like, you establish that there are, like spirits in the world or something and that there are curses. And it's like I tried not to like build that plot too far because I do have a habitual problem that hopefully the wider world will never know about where I get really big with plots and it gets too big and I can't rein it back in. And so it always ends up with, the gods are trying to take the world back from within or something. And it's too big for me to handle.
That was like one campaign that you went too far.
Yeah. I suppose.
It went super well this time.
Good. Yeah.
As someone who has played with you for most of your DMing career,
True. Yeah.
I would say that it has only gone too far like thrice.
That's all.
4 campaigns.
Thrice out of Vice. Yeah.
No, we played like 700 campaigns.
Yeah, we've done a few.
So yeah, for like the locations, like on some level, like mirrored playable characters. A lot of them did. The questions around like DM and playable character collaboration around those. What was that like?
Yeah, let's see here. Who do we go to first? Probably Holly.
Tildry.
Hi, we went to Lamplight
Yeah, okay.
first.
Yeah.
So we started in Lamplight, but like
It wasn't like your hometown.
No, but I lived there.
Right.
This
So
is
it's
like
like,
a- this
Uli
is
got
like a-
Hogwild and Lamplight.
Okay, okay.
This is like a Tildry is really its own character.
Yeah. And so, so Lamplight, didn't really reflect Uli. It more reflected just like a place to start, like the unnamed hometown kind of thing. And Hogwild definitely had a lot more Uli in it. But yeah, I really like that part of it because, again, you guys got to give me these character ideas and this kind of like an idea of your background. And then Holly and Bert behind the scenes collaborated on both being from Tildry. And at that point, all I had said was like, Tildry is where the librarium is, which is the reference of like what those 3 towers are. And, it's where the magic happens and where the fashion is. And that's like why, Holly and Bert were there. And then, Memoir was huge. That one I think developed completely differently than everyone else's because I felt in a lot of ways like Memoir was the heart of the campaign, especially going into it. I thought that was going to be the main idea behind the campaign. And so I got some influences from Tara, but then I also got to really surprise her with like a lot of the scene building. And I think the physical details of it, weren't super clear until we actually got there.
Yeah, I had a picture in my mind for Memoir that was more hobbity
Yeah. Oh.
and more swampy.
Okay.
And
that's I was so
your
careful not to
version-
make it gross.
Your version is super better.
My version is very pretty.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. And I think it made sense because gnomes are typically kind of tinkery and typically kind of techy. So having that flavored as necromancy and stone and bone was very cool and a very good choice.
Yeah. Did what were you guys' like visions of Tildry? Like to me, it's all stone and hard angles and triangles and rectangles and stuff.
Yeah, Thomas and I recently got back from a trip to Edinburgh, Scotland, and if you've ever been there, there's an old town area that's like very gothic and stone, like this kind of dark gray stone, all these buildings in the old part. And so if you go look up pictures on the internet right now of Old Town Edinburgh, that is that's how I imagine Tildry now. So I think at the time I had a really hard time imagining Tildry though before.
I did too, actually. Going
in my
into it.
head. Yeah.
I think it was kind of sci-fi for me. Just like big shiny towers that had weird floating sidewalks between
like
them.
moving walkways and elevators or whatever.
Yeah.
But then your basic medieval like town surrounding this giant castle in the center. But it wasn't a castle; it was a school.
Yeah, and for that reason, actually, so Tildry was so big, but then Hogwild to me was the most digestible, and it was the one that played the most with physical geography because we had that kind of like defense plan laid out for how to deal with the gnolls.
Sketchiest maps.
Yeah. Oh my god. But just knowing that geographically, like the water tower's in the center, the blacksmith is towards the front, and
There's
so I
a
got a
lake
good
at one side.
Exactly. Yeah. So that felt the most physically real to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the snacks place was the least of a location, I feel like. It was more of like playing like
A dungeon.
Yeah, your home is in a dungeon essentially.
With
Which was
traps.
super cool. Yeah.
There was a dungeon. There was a dragon. we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
it, you guys.
We did Dungeon and
Dragon
Dragon.
Killer, Dungeons and Dragons.
I think the lamplight was the most imaginable for me, and I'm not sure why, but I think it just like tickled something in my brain.
And I think I did do a lot more paragraphs about scene descriptions back then.
I loved the lamplight theme that we got
Oh yeah.
when we revisited. That helped set the scene for it really
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
I
Yeah, when
think.
we transported back into the jail cell.
Yeah.
Wow, that was hard to say.
Yeah.
And then the theme of the rowers outside, that was great. Yeah.
I
That was
also
a
think
whistle I whistled a long time ago.
I also think starting in Lamplight was great because it gave us several episodes to like figure out who these characters are that we were playing before we had any like
Spotlight.
deep story stuff.
Yep.
Or like
Yeah.
NPCs that we already knew to interact with.
Yeah.
How Dave happened
Mm-hmm.
was like totally unexpected. That
Yeah.
was Hannah's fault.
Yeah.
Just offhand.
Hannah fested it.
Yeah.
Manifesting.
I just love, okay?
So last question for Tim from listeners is actually around NPCs. Are there any like rules of like general like heuristics, rule of thumb sort of stuff you use to like create the NPC, and then also like any in particular that had like a certain like inspiration that comes to mind that you want to talk about?
Yeah. So for doing NPCs, like I really like to do as much as I can, like identifiable voices or unique voices. I think turn out to be the strongest characters in a lot of cases.
Bidet.
Bidet.
Dirty pockets.
Yeah. And I like trying to do voices because it's very silly and fun. But I'm just gonna look at my NPC list.
It's very hard on you when we don't see an NPC for 20 episodes.
and they come back. That's true
Yeah.
to keep the voice consistent. Yeah.
Also, making you name characters on the spot.
Yeah. So I do it on the spot sometimes. When I don't know the character is gonna exist or when it's fun to do that. But when I'm naming characters, I unless I'm naming them like referentially as a joke, I really try to make their name memorable in some way. And I think that's super important in D&D because there is nothing less memorable than like Ilathri then Dilthar. Like it's like fucking what? Like all these a million elf names. So that's why I named characters, like Maisie or like Henry Muldrift. It's named after like a magic card. Or like I'm looking through our list of NPCs here that nobody will remember, but like Daniel Orchard, Nook.
Fuck is Daniel Orchard?
Yeah.
Todd Pole is a good one.
Todd
Yeah.
That
Paul.
was solid, yeah.
Oh, all of the NPCs of Tildry, were largely named after Final Fantasy inspirations.
Yep.
So we
Thanks,
have
Thomas.
Judge Malboro, Judge Flan, Judge Tonberry. If I'm not mistaken, the FF in Engelbert Wisherspoon is a vague reference to Final Fantasy.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Engelbert Final Fantasy wishes.
I did not know that.
Beautiful.
Oh,
great.
that's hilarious. Of course it is, though. Oh my god.
So my rule of thumb to answer the question is give them a silly or memorable name. Ideally, that sounds like something else. I found is the key. A name that sounds like it's something else is very memorable.
Let it be its own mnemonic.
Yep, pretty much.
Do we have any favorite NPCs we want to highlight?
Yeah. Do you guys?
Besides
Dave.
Norp.
Yeah.
North.
Yeah. No, I loved
Norp.
playing Dave, and I loved playing Joe. Actually, was one of my favorite
Yeah.
ones because he was so like cocky and
Yeah.
yeah.
I liked Emery, and Tibio liked Emery, and no one else liked Emery.
I fucking hated that
and
bitch.
that's fine. Tibio and Emery can be best buds
was-
forever.
He was a dick right off the bat.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
And I don't abide by that.
I love
have-
Dolly because it's Lee Pace.
Yes. Dolly Pace.
The inspiration for Dolly is Hannah's obsession with Lee Pace, the actor extraordinaire.
I want to talk about how Dave happened, though, because
Sure. Sorry. Real quick. Ironically, it's funny because like Joe McMillan, the villain, is based off a character played by Lee Pace in some TV show.
oh my
Yeah.
God. Joe McVillain.
Yeah, it's a whole circle. Sorry. Go ahead, Maggie.
Dave was not supposed to happen.
That's right.
He was just another bodyguard or whatever we had to get by. And then Hannah was like,
Okay, can I speak for
Yes,
myself
please,
here? You were
please.
being so awkward around him, and I didn't really realize, I think at the time, that Uli was just like that around everybody, that she didn't really know that well.
Oh, it was early on.
And then I was like, Uli slept with him in Holly's head and Hannah's. And then that's where that all came from, is because you were being so awkward around, you're like, I can handle this, guys. And then you're like, hey. And he's like, hey. And I was like, oh, they fuck.
what was going through my head was I'm the only one who is from Lamplight. And like, of course I know the rough and tumble like bar regulars. Dave would be one of them. And I did a lot of that in the first few episodes where like, oh yeah, I know my way in. Like without discussing it with Tim or anything. Like, oh yeah, I know this. I know where that is.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense. I was trying to like, yeah, I know this place. And then Hannah was like, oh, so you and Dave, huh? And it was like a joke. It was just a joke. And then it was our running joke. And
And then it was real.
Yeah.
that was real. So
then
you
you
have
fell in
Hannah to
love.
thank for Dooley.
And then you fell in love.
It's like a lot of real marriages. It started as a joke. Yeah.
And then Hannah forces them, now kiss.
I think what I might do for this next session is actually play a little clip from each of your session zeros.
Oh no.
Oh.
So
Actually,
Terrifying.
yeah, it's an unreleased piece of media that we have was a pre-campaign where I kind of wrote a scenario for each character and then we just saw how they would play it out.
they're so bad.
Yeah, they are bad. I'll just play a clip, probably the quote unquote best part of each.
Mine's all bad. It's all Borat voice and weird.
And it's got like so none of your stories have like they're so far away from what you ended up being, each of you. and for the most part, there's some congruity there. But let's just start with Uli. So the question is, what inspired Uli, and how did she change by the end of the campaign? And I think to kick that off, we'll listen to a bit of your session 0. If I had a scroll of bull strength, I'd at least be able to do all the chores by myself, at least for a day.
No, fucking build muscles, dude. Like, lift something. Get stronger the right way.
But magic is so much easier. I could just do it all.
I beat his ass. So, Uli originally I had created to be a very self-important and very like boastful type of character, who I definitely maybe sort of based off of Bakugo from My Hero Academia.
There it is.
Which is a hyperfixation of mine. So, but I was just like, man, I should play like a really proud and like confident character with a lot of behind the scenes emotional issues. But then I realized that I don't know what boastful and confident looks like on me.
Mm-hmm.
I literally don't know how to be that person. So it was like really hard at the beginning, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I eventually, I think within the first 5 episodes, just like totally shifted away from that. I think I know originally I really wanted to put importance on Uli growing up as the only magical character in her family, or the only magical person in her family, and them really seeing physical strength and like ability as the important trait to have, and Uli coming in with magic and just kind of like exploding all of that. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So she had magic as a strength, and they saw it as a weakness. Dor especially, who really put emphasis on his own physical strength. Seeing Uli as kind of a rival,
Mm-hmm.
or like stronger than him, and like that's not okay. You are cheating your way into this because you have magic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the issues with her family kind of started. So I wanted to play her as somebody who really kind of stepped away from magic,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't want to like depend on it or use it at all because it was a weakness, because it wasn't her own physical strength, which is why I created a punch sorcerer.
Right.
So I wanted her to use physical attacks and like strength as her like.
So do you think Uli was really blind to the idea that she was enhancing herself with magic when she did those things? Like there would be like, the instances where she would crack her knuckles to use Blade Ward to start a fight. There was some hint that she might not have even known that she was using magic in those cases.
Yeah, so like when I created her, I wanted to be able to kind of skew the spells in a way that it would be like an after effect. The cracking the knuckles thing, it would be like getting ready to punch somebody and then punching them and then somehow imbuing that punch with magic and not really realizing it because she can't control it. She ran away from her problems instead of trying to like work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it started. And I realized that I do not know how to do that. I basically kind of fully shifted into just being me, but a me where I hadn't really come to terms with a lot of my own emotional problems and family issues. So it was really hard for me at the beginning because I was finally playing somebody I knew how to play, but it was really, really emotionally tied to who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So it was hard because I feel like I personally have made a lot of like emotional development in the past few years of my life.
So that's exactly what the second question is kind of getting at here. So your character Uli definitely changed the most emotionally, throughout the campaign. in terms of, getting control and sort of learning herself and learning how to handle the world. So a very similar question, but your emotional depth arc, it really culminated in the final episode. So let's talk mostly about the end of that and how that felt to finish.
Throughout the whole campaign, Uli really kind of learned that she didn't have to be physically strong or emotionally strong all the time, and that it wasn't weak to depend on who she was, like with her innate magic or the friends that she had made. Emotional connections weren't a weakness or something to be ashamed of. So I think at the very end of the campaign, we got to see a bit of that, because where in maybe the beginning half of the campaign, Uli would have tried to take on the role of like the most powerful, the one who like had to punch somebody first or like look the strongest. I think at the end, I made a decision to like step away from the role that I think I had intended to play at the beginning, if that makes sense. The choice I made was to leave Ilya with people that I knew I could trust to handle it, and then take on a role where I was like fully dependent on the innate magic I had, and kind of doing the support behind the scenes stuff, I guess, if that, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I hear you. I totally hear you. And like, trust was a huge thing for Uli. Like your character went from having a family that you couldn't trust to be vulnerable around to having, a chosen family, a group of friends that you learn to actually trust and leave important things to and make important decisions with. And you had that trust with them to be vulnerable and let go of that prioritization of strength.
Yeah. And realizing that it was a group, like joint effort. We all couldn't have done it on our own separately. Uli definitely couldn't have, but knowing she had an important role to play with her friends was really, it was interesting to kind of get there as a character, but it was also just really cool. And like I cried in the last episode when Uli got her final patch, and her patch was her, because she had gotten patches for all of her friends. I didn't know I was getting another patch. Nobody knew. So when it showed up, it was like, oh my God, I am my own friend. Like I had to accept me and like do something nice for me and like fully realize who I am.
I cried listening back. It was a really good moment. In the moment, I think we were all so like high on adrenaline that the rest of us were just like, ah!
And I'm like, oh my God.
But yeah,
I have to embrace myself.
It was beautiful.
So no, you could go ahead.
Oh, I did have a question about Uli, specifically the tantrum tankard. So like so the tantrum tankard allows you to basically bottle up emotions and then or like tap into it later, right? And it, like, I understand where that comes from for Uli, because you have you lose control over your spells and can cause damage if you have like a tantrum or heightened emotions. But I had like a really like visceral reaction when you occasionally would offer the tankard to someone else who was in like a heightened emotional state. Like that just felt like I don't like me, John, as a person, like that felt weird to like want to do that. So I don't know if you thought about that.
Yeah, that was actually very intentional. So Tim kind of created it for me, knowing that Uli would need something to help her stay in control. So for the first however many episodes, I like very intentionally used it as a crutch instead of dealing with my emotions. So I would definitely just get rid of them and deal with them later. As time went on, I realized I didn't need it so much, but other people might benefit from it. So the act of offering it was maybe a misguided sort of attempt at care for other people. Like, I see you're distressed. here's what I do when I'm distressed. Get rid of the emotion completely.
And honestly, so the tantrum tankard was one of my favorite tools from like a narrative standpoint. Being able to like not only like switch emotions on a dime, but being able to transfer them to other people. I used that pretty ham-fistedly with Dave, where I had you guys share emotions with each other.
Oh, that was so good.
But so the tankard and the mirror, that came after that, which was sort of like an upgrade or a new attempt at the tankard in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's a very organic arc to take with your challenge for control, because a lot of people are going to seek out like the pill answer. It's like, what can make me in control right now that takes no effort from me? The tantrum tankard. The mirror. And it's like, I think it's through finding and failing with these things that you really learned like what the option is, and it's the hard route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like feeling your feelings.
Yep.
Dealing with them, realizing it's not the end of the world to feel sad or angry or scared, which was like very personal for me.
Yeah.
So, definitely a lot of me in Uli.
And I would just add, like, just for listeners, like, obviously we're not psychiatrists or anything, but like, there's
for sure.
clearly a balance. But I think that's what I was kind of hoping to hear, because that was my reaction. Like, this feels like kind of inhuman to just like erase it.
It's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, no judgment. Just from my own personal experiences, I felt like it was a kind of cool platform for me to exhibit things that I've learned in my own personal life in terms of emotional well-being. And she was just a good vessel for that. But it did make it really hard for a while to play her, because everyone else was playing a character, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just playing me, but like me before I knew how to handle my own emotions. So it felt like regressing a little bit.
For whatever reason, some of my favorite Uli moments were when Uli was being very vulnerable or like self-pitying. Like, for some reason, I always remember in the 4L juice bar fight, I think you do a wild surge and explode grease everywhere. And so then you spent your turn
Just
like
pouting.
kneeling down, being like, "Oh, you're so stupid! I can't believe you did that."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's such a good turn."
And there was a conscious choice to self-pity as opposed to taking an action. And I remember because I wild surged, there was like a spell involved. I don't remember. I was like emotional because I saw
You enlarged, reduced yourself.
I reduced myself instead of doing something, because I wanted to like show that I felt super tiny and like pitiful.
I think Uli obviously has a ton of badass moments, but it takes guts and creativity to like do something dumb.
That moment of the grease and then tiny Uli was just so perfect, where you're like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. A lot of Uli was not fully intentional, but the emotional stuff really was. So I'm very proud of who she became in the end.
I'm glad you fought through it, because I think it was clear during a lot of the early episodes that you felt it. You were really feeling a lot of what Uli felt.
Yep.
And I'm really glad you fought through it, because I think the growth that Uli exhibited throughout the campaign was really, it felt earned, it felt really relatable, and it felt really raw and honest in a cool way.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the greatest exemplifying moments of this is when Tandy tries to kick Uli out of Lamplight after fighting with Emery, and that there's a lot of intensity behind that moment, because like it's Uli picking a fight with Emery and blowing up the docks, and it's us starting out this campaign, and Maggie is destroying the city I start you guys off in.
And almost killing the first NPC.
And I think the diction that Tandy uses is, "You are not a part of this group," which was like, it was a little sharper than I meant it to come off. But I was trying to put in a little bit of the fear of like, you're not gonna like the wagon's leaving the station and you're not a part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you also said something like, you're not in control.
Yeah.
And
I use that over and over again.
Yes. And after the fact, outside of playing, Tim and I had a conversation about it, because he was worried that he went too far, like personally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, because I think I maybe would have taken it that way, but I was so intentional with who Uli was
Yeah.
that it didn't feel like a personal thing at that moment.
Hey, DMs out there, it might be tempting to poke fun at your players' like personal insecurities. I would use that sparingly.
Definitely check in with them afterwards.
For sure.
Yeah.
And oh my God, talk to your players.
It was like a really cool moment of consent. Like, was this okay?
Yes.
Like, I don't want to go too far. And me being like, absolutely, this is like perfect for the character arc. So
Yeah.
consent also.
And so, yeah, that leads us off on a great spot to Holly, kind of the same question to kick us off, actually. What inspired Holly and how did she change by the end of the campaign? And to give us an idea of where Holly started, we'll listen to just a little bit of her session 0, I think.
You there! Yes, you! Why, you look like you've been walking far too long. Those boots pinch a bit? Ah, yes, I can see just by looking at you that you have been sized incorrectly. Let's just take a seat here at Holly's Cobbler Corner, and we'll have you properly fitted for the perfect shoe.
So Holly was inspired directly by Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle, the animated movie.
Love it.
And basically in the movie, if you haven't seen it, just a girl who's she works in a hat maker's shop, becomes like taken by this witch and then ends up having power like kind of within herself a little bit, and there's a bunch of other stuff that happens. But I really liked the aesthetic, I think visually, of when Maggie was drawing my character. I was like, she looks like Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle. Because I just love that like Victorian, I don't know, like workers outfit with like the long sleeves and the high neck dress and then wearing an apron over that, and she was like worked in a shop, and so like all of those things were directly inspired by that. So that's where Holly started. And then I think I just always wanted pink hair, so I was like, make her hair pink. And yeah, so I think by the end of the campaign, Holly grew in power. She, every time, Tim like did a great job of just giving me fun witchy things all the time, like Sal the cat and the broom
yeah.
and just all those things just made her like so much fun to like be that fully formed, like just super witch. Like I just wanted to be the witchiest witch in the West, like, and so that was really fun because that was definitely like what I was going for with the whole character. And then I think as far as like Holly's personality, I am Hannah in real life, a pretty direct person in general. And so I think that definitely came through in Holly. So a little bit of me in there of how I played her, of just like relatively going to be a straight arrow, shoot for what she wants, go for it, not really wait for other people to like always catch up. Like she's just going to go. And so I like to move in my personal life. So I'm like, let's go, let's do this, let's move forward. And so I don't always like to stop and think about the bad things that could happen from my actions. And so that comes through a lot in Holly Hyacinth. So yeah. And then I feel like, I don't know if there's any other things that you guys from like outsider perspective.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. So 2 notes about Holly that kind of pervade my understanding of her is, one is a sense of place. I think Holly served as home base more than any other character, being that her home was like the place that everybody kind of, lived out of for several episodes of the campaign. And I think that was big to Holly's identity, having the workshop and your home, and your basement with the actual workshop. Mm-hmm. Several episodes had, we had fights there more than, and we had fights in Snack's place too, of course, and in Hog Wild as well. But this is all Holly's home.
Mm-hmm. She was very established in like the community in a tangible house way, right? Yeah. Like there's a lot of physical things that made Holly who she was, and we were able to play literally inside those things, the shop and the house and the guild and all that stuff. So like I think that really led to that home base feeling for Holly, Holly's character, and also getting to play host was really fun in my house and stuff. So like I, as a player, I think that was really fun and definitely something like Holly was like, let's have brunch in my house. Here's some tea for everyone, So yeah.
It's interesting too, because I think Holly more than anyone had the feeling of your life got torn up by the events of the campaign. Like everyone else, it's kind of like, you pick up and drop them in. and they play in the sandbox. But Holly was here, and her life got fucked up by all the things that happened, which is really an interesting dynamic, especially in comparison to Snack, who is just like wild child.
Yeah. In a lot of ways has kind of nothing, like, only things to gain from this adventure, whereas Holly's, got a lot to sacrifice there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Moments where your decisiveness kind of got the group into trouble. Like I'm thinking specifically of Hog Wild when
Oh, the
Joe
punch.
was holding
The punch in the night.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think that was a big character development for Holly
was.
too, to kind of recognize that. And
What was the scene again?
we came out of the sewers or whatever,
was Dave.
and yeah, Joe is controlling the townspeople, and yeah, was it Dave and Emery?
I think Emery was with us.
Yeah.
But it was whoever was still up there. So Dave and Barrett, I think, were being held down by townsfolk because they were
Yeah,
unaffected.
as collateral to be
Yeah.
like, hey, don't fuck with us or we'll hurt these people.
Yep.
And then Holly fucked with them,
Yeah.
and they hurt those people.
Yeah.
She fucked around and found out.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the other part of Holly that I think changed a lot over time. And there's a couple of really cool moments where it comes to a head, is where Holly has some hints that she's not necessarily callous, but she does what's good for business.
Yeah.
That's kind of her mentality. And throughout the campaign, she learned to make choices that were bad for business, but better for the soul. And so
Yeah.
she had a couple moments early on where she was kind of deciding between the optimal move and doing the nice thing for the party.
Yeah.
And she chose the optimal move. But as we progressed later on, like in the bone in Tibio's place, towards the end of that with the Raven fight, Holly was about to leave the fight, and she was on the bridge, and then she goes, "Damn it!" and she like runs back into the fight.
Yeah.
You know?
That was
And
really
also
good.
deciding to become a vampire at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big team player
Self-sacrifice.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's 100%. Like, she started off because the first half of the campaign, she's really focused on just saving her sister, and that's all
Yeah.
she really cares about.
Yeah.
And so everything else was secondary to that. And so I think after that was completed and she felt like safe with her sister, who was her only family, she kind of actually had like friendships and, her new CurseMaker family that she had built up. And so starting to care actually about these people, because I think in campaigns for me in the past, it's like we're all in from like the second play, and I'm like, no, Holly doesn't care about these people really. They're a means to an end right now in the beginning.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That's a cool way to look
yeah.
at it.
And
Yeah,
not in a
absolutely.
mean way,
Yeah.
but she's not going to stick her neck out for them if
Yeah.
it gets in the way of her goal.
She's
So-
driven. She was driven, and that was a really cool thing.
And growing up in poverty and having to be self-sufficient, like it makes sense that you would depend on yourself and your sister and nobody else.
So Holly was kind of thrown into like a mixed bag of personalities, and it's obvious that she would be skeptical to them, like from the get-go. For some of them, especially, like Snack, for instance. So we've got a listener question here. How did you navigate playing with characters with obviously different alignments? And so, I think the easiest difference there from the beginning is Holly versus Snack, where Holly is a very kind of dogmatic, business owner, and Snack is a literal like creature from the deep kind of thing. And I think at the beginning, Snack is pretty straight up and down evil in that he's, selfish to his own end sort of thing. And Holly, I would say, is pretty much lawful good at the very beginning. And that's a hard spread. So how did you manage that relationship?
Yeah, I think of the one of the first or second episodes when we get in the boat with Todd Pole together, me and Snack. And at that point, Holly was just like, "Oh, you're an interesting little nugget, aren't you, Snack?" Like she didn't really have much more thought beyond that. As long as he wasn't a threat to what she was doing, she was like, "Oh, you're kind of a weird little guy." And so I don't know. That's kind of, I think, like she was like, "You're a lizard, like my sister's a lizard." I don't know if there was much beyond that, and it was maybe just focusing on my character at that time, too. But I think I'm trying to think of more interactions. I think Hannah and Holly, I always had a lot of fun interacting with Snack's character or John's character. Sorry, but Snack. And yeah, I don't know. I just I think a big part of Holly / me personally as a player, I was always jealous of Snack because he got to looks like he had more fun, quote unquote. And so I don't know. I feel like Holly was probably felt more restrained by her responsibilities, right? And it felt like Snack got to do whatever and be kind of this he obviously had his own motives, but it just seemed like, oh, this is what a carefree living would be like, of like just doing whatever you want, roaming the lands, no one but yourself. Whereas I think Holly really felt the weight of her responsibility to like stay focused on that too. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And once you figured it out, you got to be a little selfish.
Snatched
Yeah.
your opportunity.
Snatched.
sure
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So I don't know. I just love playing like really dramatic, kind of wild characters. So like when I got to be a kobold, like you guys obviously heard it all on the pod, but yeah, it just is like fun to cut loose like that because you have to be a real person in real life. So like the more fantastical you can be, I think when playing D&D, it just kind of makes it more fun for me as a player. So
Mhm. Yeah, that's a perfect segue into Snack here. So let's start off on the same spot. What inspired Snack, and how did he change by the end of the campaign?
I'm going to play a little snack clip.
Yeah, our episode 0 of Snack. I can't even remember. This is to do with the vampire, right? Piezo?
Piezo.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's take a listen to that.
Have you belongings to give me for the respect you give?
I do. I have riches untold.
Ah.
And he turns around and gestures to Room and says, "Shit.
Ah,
It seems I have been plundered in my sleep."
well, I will take your services then. Come, follow me.
I can give you this.
What?
It's the stake that was in my heart. I managed to pull it out.
Ah, gross. No.
So yeah, me as like a player, I'm always very cognizant, maybe like a little paranoid about being like an overbearing character, like at the table, and that's helpful because like in the past, like I do spend more energy trying to like highlight other characters or try to engage with them, but like we played a campaign, and I kid you not, like we talked about this just a few months ago, like Maggie and I played this campaign, 6 people, not like 15 people, 6 people for over a year, and she literally didn't even remember my character. Like it was that much of a background character. It was like not even an NPC. Like
That's right.
what was his name? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
so anyway, but like what was good about that is like for this podcast, it was like, you got to do something different, John. Like every character is Henry Muldrift that
Yeah,
you do,
sure.
you know? It's just like, so then I was like, fine, I'm just going to do something really off the wall. And like the Tasha's book came out, and then this was just such an absurd like concept, like a kobold with a genie.
Yeah.
And like, so like, I guess as far as like initially playing him, like I was really focused on like this concept of like an evil puppy. Like
Yeah.
the,
To me, it was always a toddler with a bazooka.
yeah. It's like it doesn't know any better. It is doing evil.
Yeah.
But it's like just because
So
nobody
cute.
yeah. It's also cute. But that like became unsustainable. Like I just realized I was spending so much energy like how can I fuck up what they're trying to do
Yeah.
in like a way that's not totally destructive? And I just didn't want to live in that space the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So then like I just tried to like make like pinnacles of like evilish behavior and then signs of good, like the heroes feast cocoa and like buying it to share with people and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like still doing something horrible like the next day, like killing the bird he thinks is a spy.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think
if I can, real quick, there were so many good instances of Snack just going out and killing things. Like,
setting traps.
yeah, there was. I don't remember the specific quote right now, but it was something about they had asked Snack to. They were like, "Go kill some frogs or something," or like, "Go hunt for us" or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he comes back to the party, and they're like, "Snack, did you like bring back some frogs for us?" And he's just like, "Bring it back." Like, what are you talking about? He's like,
Yeah.
I just went out there and killed a bunch of stuff. Like,
yeah. So, and then, so as like far as progression goes, like I just wanted to like show that progression from like evil, and I didn't know where he was going to land in the end, but I knew he would have to kind of like meet in the middle with the party. That just really corresponded well with gaining power, and then he did this like Charmander to Charizard sort of thing, like so
Perfect analogy.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So, yeah, and what was weird about that though is like it was really hard for me to not still like play him as kind of a smaller creature
yeah.
because like I wanted him to still think he was small, but he is big. And so like that was a weird thing to like kind of like keep straight over audio. But yeah, like that was definitely the concept was basically you know, I spending like the early impressionable years around just basically chaotic evil environment. Everything around him is trying to kill him or like maliciously harm each other. There's no such thing as friendship or family into, you know, like this new environment and kind of like learning what he could become. And that's kind of where he ended up. He still has that chaotic nature, but just kind of stumbled upon like influences that allowed him to be like a useful, like I guess a positive force in the world. And that just like blind pursuit of power too, like just becoming a dragon. Why? I don't know. I just want to, you know, just dog catching the car, and he did it. Like he did get to become a dragon.
Yeah.
And then that's what triggered like the need to think about it. Yeah.
So for Snack as a character, as a whole, throughout this campaign and moving forward, what did you learn from the character of Snack playing such a different kind of angle on D&D, and what are you going to carry forward into future campaigns?
Pick a voice before you start recording. It's funny. Like we did the episode 0, and I was like, "Oof, that wasn't great. I should practice that." Yeah. and then we just recorded again, and I was like, "Well, that's what I got." But it did like, I mean, it was sustainable. I was able to do it. That's a big one. I think also like, if you're having fun, the character is fun. At least that's how I feel. So, what I'm going to carry forward is like my next character is not going to be this aspect of the party, but I'm going to let myself have fun and let myself have the spotlight and the character that is to be.
Yeah. Awesome. And then there are a couple, super important moments. We talked earlier a little bit about the cross-post incident and how much of a milestone that was for the whole campaign, I think, if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that one, so that scene, what triggered that moment was Uli's sister, what was her name?
Viri
was killed for all we knew at that moment by a cursed item. And that cursed item we knew came from the Crossroads shopkeep person who was like knowingly selling cursed items. We let him live, and I think Snack probably wanted to kill him or something. But that was probably the peak giving into kind of a dark side moment for Snack, where so he basically just has Genie teleport him there and kills this guy. Yeah. Like that's what he went there to do, and he did it deliberately, like
making a Genie an accomplice to that act too.
Yeah. And like what was interesting, as soon as I got there, I was like, what the hell are you doing, John? Like you're just like totally derailing this. You have no idea. So that was like a very like uncomfortable moment for me, because I was like, literally I just like grabbed whatever Tim had in mind and just like totally did something different at that moment. But I think that was a good that was a good climax to that, giving into an evil impulse, even if it came from like an emotional state, like a positive thing, emotional relationship with another person. But I think that was at his darkest moment, probably.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it came out into something pretty cool, relying on Holly to kind of fix that situation, since Mojo was like directly threatening you and all that kind of stuff. But that also accelerated the plot, by a good handful of episodes, because I wasn't prepared to divulge, some of the things that we learned there. Like Mojo was like directly out to get you guys at this point, and knows who Holly is, and kind of reveals the whole fight as being between undead spirits. And, I guess that comes a little later where it's outright revealed. But yeah, it definitely pushed things ahead of where I was expecting to be. And I feel like it woke up the campaign in a really cool way.
Thanks. Yeah. And I mean, like, as the GM, you had every opportunity to just like nix that. Like it didn't have to happen. You'd be like, no, and it would have been fine. But I'm really glad you let me do that, because I definitely felt a need to do something drastic there, and I think it came across good.
It was really dark in the moment, and it provided a really good parallel to the first Jinx fight in the nightclub.
Yeah,
where you gleefully
annihilated,
just fucked that guy up so bad
Yeah.
with joy and cheer. And in this moment, you were very serious.
Yeah.
So even though it felt like a backslide, even though it felt like a regression for Snack to be doing such lethal violence without any input from anybody else, it was still different in the tone because Snack was very serious.
That's a good point. I think Snack knew at that point what he was doing and how bad it was.
Yeah, it wasn't a game. It was a very serious thing. He was like, these are the consequences for the crime that you've done against my people, like my friends.
And it was like intentional justice. Like
Yeah.
he was trying to
He wasn't having fun.
do the right thing.
Yeah.
It was
So
a
it
lot,
was- yeah.
There's a lot less of pushing a knife into a deer to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't playing, and that it even though the concept of what you did felt backwards, the implementation was a forward movement.
Yeah. And I mean, I had like when I made the character on alignment, it said chaotic evil, and I wanted to make that convincing. And I think that's where it happened.
Yeah.
I think that was an instance where like you did a lot of what I do in characters is like I don't to a fault of myself. I don't always think about the party and the consequences because I'm so trying to focus on like how true can I be to this character. And I think it was nice to have someone else in the party do that and like be like, I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm playing true to Snack right now in this moment. And it, the consequences be damned. And like, I play like that to a fault, like I said, sometimes. And I'm trying to be better about being more conscious of how it's going to play to the thing and like balancing it, right? Because you still want to be true to the character. But it was nice to have, it's nice to have some of those other people have those moments of like,
Impulse.
I'm just going to react and how Snack would react in that moment. And that's when I punched Joe.
Yeah.
I feel like that was Holly. Like she would get fucking mad and just want to punch him in the face. Like, like that's, and let the chips fall where they may. And so I think it was nice. There was a lot in Hog Wild that happened like that. And I just felt like Snack was my kindred spirit.
Hog Wild brings out the worst in people.
Yes, it does.
I think that friction that happens when you act in your own interest instead of the party's is super valuable, though.
Yeah.
Like it creates really interesting moments and things to play off of.
Yeah.
I
for the
think
rest of us.
everybody's a little scared to create those
Yeah.
moments because you don't
Yeah,
want
I
to
am. I
rock
know.
the boat.
Yeah.
But it does help you kind of become more your character. Like what would Uli do in this situation? Is she mad at Snack for doing that? Or is she like, yeah, revenge. My sister's laying here dead. Like
Yeah, there is an old like D&D meme or whatever of a terrible asshole player who's like, oh, it's what my character would do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's definitely ways to do that in a very good way that both John and Hannah has pulled off. So
we're just good players. That's
So for Tara and Tibio, we'll start from the same place, but I want to put a little caveat in this. So the question, of course, is what inspired Tibio and how did he change by the end of the campaign? And I really want to focus on the very beginning of Tibio because in my memory, Tibio was the first character that was kind of submitted like for the campaign. And it was, I want to be a gnome riding in a skeleton. And I think like I had very recently listened to, I forgot the name of the podcast already. Rude Tales of Magic.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a skeletal character in that one. And I remember thinking of that show and, like me as a typical DM, I was very resistant to that idea because I was like, well, that's a huge mechanical advantage to be riding a skeleton permanently that you can kind of command at your beck and call.
Yeah.
And then like the more I thought about it, the more we got into it, I was like, this never really puts Tibio in like a super advantageous position.
No.
And like, that's because Tara's smart about the way she plays it and she's not using it as a superpower. It's more of a flavor thing.
yeah.
And that's partially me as a DM limiting her on what she can do based on what special bones she has and that kind of stuff. But anyway, Tibio came to me as a really strong inspiration that turned into one of my favorite characters I've ever like seen, and it started in my mind as a joke. So tell me about that.
It for sure was a joke.
We've got a fresh one over here.
Oh no.
Um,
What are you doing?
are you here to help or no?
I don't
What's your name?
my name is Tibio. I don't understand what you're doing.
Does anybody know this guy?
So Tibio at the very beginning, and there actually might be a message that I sent to Maggie about this, was supposed to be a gnome in a skeleton in a trench coat that was like selling watches.
Yeah.
like you want to buy a watch? And like he was supposed to be a grown-ass adult and very skeevy. And then I don't know what happened. I think it was just like this joke can't be a forever character. It's too much of a joke. And somewhere along the line, it turned into this Tim Burton-esque Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, little boy, little
sick
sweet,
Victorian
little
child.
sweet, sick Victorian child with all the weight of the world on his shoulders. And in his current incarnation, Tibio was originally essentially an orphan, raised by his grandmother with a little brother who had no magic in a village full of necromancers. So his whole identity is wrapped up in not knowing where his parents are, feeling like he's a parent to his little brother, and feeling like he has to bring his family back together. There was no intention for him to be this underworld leader character. That his plot in my mind, his life in my mind was very small. And it was very cool to be able to expand on that. And I mean, all credit to you, Tim, because none of that was me, but I mean, some of it was me, but but it is really interesting because he started out as just a joke, joke.
I do feel like it's fun when the jokes turn into like real inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Like I've never heard of a character like that, you know, or like thought of that dynamic of writing inside a skeleton the whole time, like your whole life. That's like you know? And so like, I just think it was really inspired. Whereas I feel like I lean on like other things, like in Holly's example, you know, things that I like, I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to have as a character. And so I don't know. I just felt like your character was very unique. And it was really fun to like see you play that and how you controlled the skeleton and stuff throughout the whole campaign. So I loved every bit of Tibio for sure.
And not only having a weird concept to begin with, you decided to do a French accent.
Yeah.
Okay, so luckily I was actually taking French at the time that I started doing this, but the French accent was horrific at first. It was very bad.
And I'll say for anybody listening to the Adventures on Ethersea at the same time, we came first. Yeah,
we did. Our bad French accent was first.
I think
got
French
good.
people came first, you guys.
Well, debatable.
Yeah, I don't know. He was supposed to be this very sweet character, and I wanted him to be kind of refreshing and bring an innocence to the party because I got the feeling that like I was going to be in a party of complicated adults.
Yeah.
And I wanted this young boy to be like, no, right is right. Killing is bad. Obviously killing is bad. Having that close relationship with life and death and the underworld and necromancy and still having that like insistence that killing is bad is so like it was just a fun thing to play with for me.
Yeah.
That dichotomy is so good. Like Tibio can do some truly horrific things.
Oh yeah, horrendously terrible things.
Yeah. In the hands of the wrong person, you know, Tibio would have been the main villain of everything.
But he's just so sweet.
Yeah.
It's like that you had ethically sourced bones.
Yeah.
Like you never killed anyone.
Yeah, my intention was that all of his bones would be from skeletons of deceased ancestors. That was kind of the original idea. And then as I was going, I think it just kind of came naturally that it would be like rare and interesting bones that were found out there.
Or like I think I phrased it once of like as bones of interestingly led lives or something.
Yeah.
So it's like kings and
it's like
They
kind
have
of
cool
paired with like
stories.
stories.
Yeah.
And like archival and stuff like that. And because we started out with some items here and there, and I never wanted items for Tibio. So I think the bones made a really cool mechanic of giving Tibio magic items to work with without actually having a bunch of magic items to work with.
Yep.
Just add it to your skeleton.
Because Tara, as a player, didn't want them for some reason. No idea why. I just, every time I got a magic item, I was like, I'll put that in my pocket and never look at it again.
Yeah. Just conceptually, like Tibio as a whole, like a kind of a note to DMs out there. It's like let people try like weird stuff and deal with the mechanics of it in the moment. You know, like I've caught myself doing this a number of times, disproportionately, admittedly, to Uli. I've cut her off more than anybody else, where she wants to suggest a kind of special power or a homebrew mechanic, and I cut it off on the basis of, well, if I think about what other classes have that ability available to them, you can't also have that and be what you are. You know, it's not fair for you to have what they can do and for you to be you. And so I kept cutting off all these ideas because they mechanically sounded too overpowered. Tibio's skeleton never put me in a tough spot as a DM. Not really. Like, there was never a point at which I was like, oh shit, like I gave Tibio this super powerful auto skeleton. Like, I have to worry about that. Let people do fun stuff.
Yeah, well, and I wanted Tibio's skeleton to not feel like a weapon.
For sure.
So even though you did give me the mechanical ability to strike with it, I rarely used it, and I didn't want to feel like I kept comparing it to a mech suit, but I didn't want it to actually feel like a mech.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be more flavorful, more about interacting with the world, more about carrying your history with you. And that was really important to me for Tibio, was for him to feel like he was carrying his history with him.
Yeah. Speaking of your history, you had a very mysterious background in that, you know, we talked about some of your duties in your town, but we didn't go into a lot of personal Tibio stuff. We referenced like the squirrels and the slippers and that your town loved you.
I forgot about that.
Shit was just ad-libbed.
So cute.
Oh, man.
So what did you have like planned? You know, you've touched on this a little bit, but what did you imagine Tibio's upbringing to be like?
I thought it was going to be very like Tim Burton sad boy. I pictured it being like French provincial, sad, rainy, almost poverty with his family being very close-knit and feeling keenly the loss of his parents.
Like not enough soup every night.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
situation.
Like,
I have to boil my bones to
Yeah.
get nutrients.
Yeah, for real. And I pictured him. I mean, the relationship between Tibio and his brother initially was very parallel to my relationship with my sister. And having that younger sibling that you would do anything for. And I think Holly can relate to that a lot as a character. Like having that sibling that is your whole world for a lot of your life. And initially, my thought was that Tibio had to take care of his brother Fibolo and had to really shelter him and shield him from the world that just wasn't equipped to deal with a non-magical child in a town full of necromancy magic people.
Yeah.
But the introduction of Fibolo when we got to Memoir was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, because I had no idea that he was going to be like big burly boy, which was perfect.
Yeah.
Because of course he would be the younger brother that's like literally larger than Tibio. And just the attitude and the boisterousness of Fibolo as a character was really fun. Yeah, all of the NPCs for Memoir were really just delightful and very surprising, because my initial thoughts for Tibio were very grim and bleak.
Yeah.
And having his whole life be flavored by necromancy and by, you know, this death and life and focus on protecting the world from the underworld and all this very dark stuff, but having the people all just be like cheerful as fuck was perfect. So I enjoyed that a lot.
It just reminded me, you talking about Memoir, of the Bones and Beyond whole scene with Jeannie and Snack buying things for the lamp decorations. I forgot about that. That was so funny. Another favorite moment.
And we'll kind of finish a round of character questions on Bert.
Yeah, Rex.
Hey.
You scared me.
Hey, hey. Bert, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to
Listen, I need your help,
almost see
Bert.
you in the dark
I
here.
need your help. I'm sorry. I know I told you it wouldn't happen again, Bert.
Oh, jeez, Brex.
But I need your help. It's bad this time.
What'd you do this time, Brex?
They're saying murder.
They're saying murder.
Bert, I didn't do it.
Thomas, what inspired Bert, and how did they change by the end of the campaign?
All right. So this came at least somewhat from my own personal life, too. I used to be a journalist, and I went to journalism school and worked in that industry for like 10 years or so. So I liked the idea of having a character who is like an intrepid reporter, just like gung-ho out to get the story and get the scoop. Not only did I think that would be fun to play, but I thought that it would be kind of a gift to you, the GM, as a way to like, hey, I'm seeking out a story. So, and you're the one telling a story. So, I was early on, some other inspirations for the character were like, chronicler from The Name of the Wind.
For
like,
sure.
I like the idea of someone whose like superpower was they're really good at writing.
Yeah.
They can write good.
Yep.
And then like the kind of background of the librarian at Tildry was based a little bit on like the Citadel in the Game of Thrones where Sam works.
A center of knowledge.
Yeah. The one in our campaign is more like lively and less stuffy and like but I liked that idea of kind of working in a place like that.
And that kind of monk lifestyle as well, where like you're much more interested in the pursuit of knowledge and truth rather than a lot of these kind of earthly day-to-day sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. And so a cleric was a really interesting choice for me because I wanted my character to be like focused on this pursuit of truth and knowledge, and cleric sort of fits that. But in Dungeons and Dragons, typically a cleric is like a follower of an actual god.
Right.
And I really didn't want to do that because I liked the direction of just focusing on these qualities rather than an actual entity.
Right. Well, I like
world.
the focus of the truth itself, regardless of like the kind of governing body behind that or any given entity. It's like the idea of the truth being, an unbiased truth by itself. Yeah.
And so I presented that to you saying that like, I don't really want to have a god that I'm following, but I don't know exactly how to pull it off. And the way it worked out with the book and the Tower of Knowledge was extremely good. Like I couldn't have planned it better. I really liked how that all played out. The knowledge domain cleric was interesting to me too, because that can do two cool things, which is becoming proficient at any skill, which lets me do fun, dumb stuff like kick a flaming skull like a football or know how to skateboard.
And then having the excuse of, I read a book about this once. So perfect.
Yep. And then it also has access to those cool story-driven spells like augury and scrying.
Yeah.
To
which I'll confess, before this campaign, I was terrified of those spells because you have to, in some way, predict what's going to happen concretely.
Yeah, they do seem a little mean to GMs if without heads up.
Right, yeah. If it's a toss-up, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, but I tried to present it as like storytelling opportunities for moving the plot forward and stuff like that. What else? Oh, I wanted his name to be very obnoxious.
Very long. Yeah, I think even Benjamin Blank commented once on how miserable it was to write that.
Yeah. Wisher Spoon is named after my academic advisor in college.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, cute.
Awesome.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
Is Sid clearly a reference to
Sid
anything?
clearly is kind of based on him. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Mark Witherspoon. Shout out to Mark Witherspoon.
Awesome. Yeah. And then Sid also being a reference to
Final Fantasy.
Yes,
Yes.
of course.
I was like, well, we have these other characters. We got to have a Sid.
Yeah, of course. He's like the one that makes it into every Final Fantasy. Yeah. I think
Added chocobos, right?
Yes. Yeah, we didn't have any chocobos. Yeah, we missed
We had
that.
Snack. They're probably like, copyright.
Bert, I think you've heard this from a number of people, but Bert was a very stable character throughout the campaign. In what moment did you feel most proud of your character and his achievements?
We talked about a lot of them already. I mean, I think his biggest moment was at the tower in the butterfly effect, making that big choice to not reject the truth and instead follow the actual reality, not the made up one.
Mm-hmm.
He did have that kind of change toward more combat driven stuff too after Snack's crosspost incident.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of culminated in the dragon battle. I was really happy with how Bert did in that.
Just barely hanging on.
Yep. Yeah, and another big culmination was again what we talked about in the last episode, pulling off a big curse breaker spell at the end to send Moja away.
Yeah, I think those were definitely like the big Bert highlights,
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because the trial was such a huge Bert focus, and then his real moment didn't come until so much later.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I think we do have to answer perhaps the most important question of this campaign. This is for everyone. If you had to ship any characters in the campaign, who would they be? This is players or PCs and NPCs included.
I assume this means canon stuff.
For sure, non-canonical.
Okay.
But like in my mind, Victoria and Margot was always a thing. Sorry, Victoria. Veronica Venus.
Oh,
and
sure.
Margot
Okay.
was always a thing.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But she was so old.
Well, they aged separately.
I
Yeah,
know.
they
The
were
curse breaking.
artificially aged.
Yeah.
Bert and Brax.
Oh,
Rex.
yeah. I mean, they're like
Little
birds of a
bromance
feather.
in the stacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were in college together,
Yeah.
We more than once talked about Bert and Dor,
Oh,
yes.
I shipped that.
That would have been so good.
which was kind of.
too.
I made the comment every time that Dor would like literally split Bert in half.
Or
So
Bert
aggressive.
and Ilya.
Yes,
Yeah,
there was
lots of
yeah.
bit of.
Yeah.
Lots of Bert ships.
I mean, my siblings were all beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need to ship Holly with anybody because she'll just do all of
Yeah,
them.
she did it
Yeah.
in game.
I took
I
care
don't
of
really
it.
know how to do it in game, I guess.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Ilya and Bert
Mm-hmm.
just because of the saving each other's lives.
Yeah.
I
fair
ship John and Tim through Snack and Jeannie, obviously.
Oh.
But there were moments when I was like, you two love each other. Like at the table.
They literally said that to each other.
Yeah.
No.
That's
There were
definitely true.
definite Jeannie snack moments though, where Jeannie would get jealous
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Idris.
Yeah, that
and-
was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That's pretty
awesome.
solid, yeah.
But I feel like in those moments, just knowing Tim and John for so long, I was like, these bros are besties. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just the bromance between Tim and John was so palpable at the table. I was like, I love you guys.
I think in a big way, like I got to do something I've wanted to do for a long time, which is like
Shower him in gifts.
Well, and it's like, sure, there's a lot to be said for how much I adore John, but at the same time, it's like I've played D&D with John for a long time. I know John has played D&D separately from me for a long time. He's got the most experience at the table by the years, I think. So I felt really confident just giving him all the power and trusting him to kind of do the right thing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super liberating from my perspective to just have Jeannie just gush on him constantly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just turn in any whatever magic item and just do whatever.
Get a wish. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I ship
Well, Dave and Uli.
Dave and Uli, but that's canon
That's real.
now.
Yeah.
I mean, they were touch and go, and Uli was just so resistant to it. But
Let me run down the NPC list. It stops at a certain point. It actually stops at Memoir, but let me rattle off a few. Sheriff Tandy, Emery Gray, Donna Clark, Cameron the Bard, Todd Pohl, Joe McMillan, Garth Pohl.
Garth Pohl.
Referenced once, Todd's dad. Somebody asked, "What is your father's name?"
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we were like, Garth.
but there was a reference though.
It was just a mention, yeah. Okay, we got Veronica Venus, Maisie Muldrift, Henry Muldrift, Ash Muldrift, Jeannie, Rin Halo, Ethan Doink. He was a prisoner that you guys wrapped in webs.
Oh, that's right.
Dave and Buster Hackbone.
Oh, I didn't know their last name.
Bella Beaumont.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Holly's super fan.
Earl of Earl's Pearls. Viri Nis. Dieterman the Elf. Hilda, the soup maker. Augustus, the old Cursebreaker. Daniel and Danielle Orchard. Mumbledundus, Humbledundus, and Rumbledundus.
Yes.
Yes.
Margot Bingo, Nook Barrow, Samantha Barrow, Lisa Barrow, Millhouse Barrow, Ulrich Nis, Jason Pigeon, Ilya Nis, Stylo Coolmate, Auk the Bugbear.
Stylo cool, man.
I don't remember half
That's
of
so
them.
good.
Listener,
Pencil, right?
if you don't know them, it's okay. We
No,
don't
it's
either.
fine. Yeah, Stylo Coolmate was the guy who led you on the tour of the brewery. He was so excited to meet
I
you.
love Stylo.
Auk the Bugbear, who had a hangover when you met him.
Yeah.
because we thought he was just like
A bugbear.
a bugbear, and
Yeah.
then he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was so hungover."
No, he was terribly eloquent.
Yes.
The judges, Flan, Tonberry, and Malboro. Those two dwarf hammer guys that tried to kill Holly were
I
named
blighted.
Marin and Lugan for Mario and Luigi.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's funny.
Mina, Benjamin Blank, Professor Norp, G. Quinn, the bouncer, Jinx, Sid Clearly, Danny D. Pockets, Bidet, Carl the Centaur, Toby Goshman, Amaranth, Megan, Born, Auk the Genasi. Never got back to him. Ben Barrett, Sheriff Law, Besha, that's Mama Nis. Vin is Papa Nis.
They did have names.
Delorium, whose name got
yeah.
changed
God.
immediately. Gaspard, John Copper, John Silver.
Oh, they were the suitors.
Okay. Billy Platt, who was the final suitor. Sacra, Talus, Maxilla, and Fibulofemur. And that is when I stopped writing down NPC names.
Oh my god.
What about like Tandy and
She's at the very beginning. She's the first one.
and
Ship.
Oh, shit.
Chief or Captain or the inn owner?
Oh,
Boss.
Yeah,
Boss,
Ross
yeah.
the Boss.
Ross the Boss.
and Tandy.
I can see it.
Yeah, definitely.
He writes novels. She works on ships.
Yeah.
It's like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
There was a brief mention of Joe McMillan, Veronica Venus, too, being a thing.
Yeah, that was
Sure.
Hannah.
Okay.
That was another Hannah fueled like romance thing, and
I
she
think
got me to do it.
She actually texted you at the table to say
yes,
something about
it
that.
was Hannah's birthday. Hannah was a
Oh.
little drunk. Hannah texted me and said,
"Now we're getting
"You should
into
imply that they're together." And I was like, "I don't want to do that," but I did it anyway, just for you.
Also, we forgot about Donna.
I did mention Don at the very beginning.
Oh, you did?
Bobber salesman?
Yeah, the bobber
Yes.
salesperson.
Yep.
I feel like if the campaign had gone a different way, it could have been Uli, Dave, Emery as a little triad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Emery, his involvement could have been very different with this
Yeah.
whole campaign, start to finish.
If anyone aside from Tibio had ever been nice to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, I thought it was going to be Bert and Emery were
I
going
was
to
a
be the
little
pals.
bit
Yeah,
nice to
yeah.
him.
That leads us great into another user question for us. This is just to do with some unresolved stuff. But we had a question from Paul H. here, and it was Emery's eye cave and Lysander's creepy eye-based transformation are both big question marks. Are we likely to hear more about these subjects in Season 2?
I have a follow up to this question.
Yeah.
Tim, are you afraid of eyes?
No, no, I'm not.
Show off a lot.
Yeah, I think they've got like a good impact. I think visually, I like to rely on them for that. Visually, yeah.
I mean,
to answer the question directly, are we likely to hear more about these subjects in Season 2? I would say yes. That was the eye thing, and Lysander obviously was transformed by the same thing that we had seen in Emery's eye cave thing. That is something that I chose not to get into in this campaign. Kind of like I cut it for time sort of thing, where it's like I didn't want to split the focus that much into Emery's adventure because it was so much about what you guys were doing.
Mm-hmm.
That is also to say that evil went unchallenged during this time. So it had time to build up its own power.
Sauron.
Yeah.
Ooh, we fucked up, y'all.
shit.
We should have gone chasing
I didn't wanna
the
fight that thing.
eyeballs.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see kind of as things progress where else that has influenced the world.
Can it not be a spider?
Well, no, that was just Lysander.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want any more
about a lobster?
spider. That's
had-
fine.
Lobsters are just ocean spiders.
We had one more question from Paul, and it was, our heroes have become incredibly powerful. Will Bebop still follow the same party in season 2? Short answer, no.
No! We all are very excited about our next characters,
Yeah.
though.
Obviously, it's unsustainable to have a dragon in the party, so had to cut that one off.
He's
Yep.
like almost a demigod, guys.
Yeah,
It's like the start of every Metroid game where he loses his dragon powers. For no
exactly.
reason.
Yes. Yeah. We'll say you
Become
back
a
to level
tiny-
3.
Well, you done
Kobold
fucked
again.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us into the perfect position to talk about season 2.
Well, so it won't follow the same party in season 2, but
It'll
Is
be
there-
the same players.
same players. But are there opportunities to see these characters in season 2?
I would definitely say so.
It will be in the same world. We
Yeah.
have confirmed
Okay.
that. So
Yeah.
So we are in development on season 2. We'll be recording in September. Posting has yet to be announced as far as posting dates go. Season 2 will take place in the same world. It is east of where you were, and it is roughly 15 years later.
East.
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 So exciting to go
excited.
east.
I want to like tell them
Please be
everything.
excited.
Please clap. So we're trying to keep campaign 2 relatively mysterious. Suffice to say, we are going all out in our effort for the second season. It is currently named Cloudfall.
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 Heard it here first, folks.
And it's going to be sick as fuck.
So the final episode of our campaign, we didn't really have a chance to really connect on this and talk about all of our feelings around it because we ended it and then left. So
It was a long session.
it was a long session.
Left for like 5 weeks. Like we haven't been
Yes.
all in the same room since.
Yes.
Yeah. And in that time, we like built an entire D&D room and developed our characters for the next season. So like,
A
Yeah.
lot has happened since then.
yeah.
So the last 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2 of the finale, were recorded in the same night, and that started with me asking everyone to leave the room except for Hannah and Thomas, and I offered them the ability to become a vampire for the last session. That's kind of where we began.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised by that. I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah, that was fun.
Also, we've never done like a you leave the room now.
Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of a fun. I was like, "Ooh, surprise at the very end, Tim." So I thought that was just a fun element to like play out as a player, I guess. And so kind of left some surprise for everyone. I don't know. I think it was kind of interesting.
I thought it was apt to have us leave because we're prone to table talk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the people who left are the ones who would probably be the most against any of our friends becoming vampires
For sure.
or trying to take their place.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it meant a lot to have you guys physically out of the room for that decision. Not just for the impact of the reveal, which came pretty quickly, but yeah, more for the actually getting it to happen kind of thing. Because I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that I appreciated not being in the room for it because it allowed Tibio's reaction to be impacted by my own shock.
Mhm.
And I think Tibio's reaction was very visceral and very honest to his feelings of what the right thing is and how far the group had come. So in that moment, I mean, his shock and my shock were very similar. Like, how could they possibly have made this decision without us? How could they possibly have made this decision without confirming everything was ready to go? It felt so impulsive and it felt so unreasonable and it felt so dangerous. And I think the only reason that Tibio didn't get into it more is because it was too late. It was already done. So in that moment, he just wanted to get a move on to fix it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do his best to make whatever potion needed to be made
Mhm.
and get this done so that we could deal with it. Yeah, it was a really interesting moment as a player to know that Tibio would be so conflicted about it.
Yeah, and Uli had a lot going on in that episode too, from the kind of magic overload, her wild magic surge in which she rolled a wasn't it 100?
Yeah, I rolled 100.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the final episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just dealing with the fact that the sister I kept asking about, and Tim would be like, "Oh, don't worry about it," or "Oh, I don't know."
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, she's the final boss."
Yep.
So, it was interesting to take the character growth I had in that the development for the entire season, and then have her have another emotion surge, but have it go a totally different way from the way it had been going.
Yeah.
So losing control and then knowing she could regain control was really cool.
Well, and asking for help. When you
Yeah.
called Bert back into the room, I was
Yeah.
like, hell yeah, Uli. Hell yeah. Get a friend.
Yeah. Like,
Phone a friend.
I can't handle this on my own.
That was great. And I mean, that was the perfect opportunity for Bert to have that role again of like talking through something with somebody and playing group therapist a little bit. And I think, yeah, just that whole chunk of time was played really well with Holly being like tired and weird and we didn't know why for a little bit, and like Tibio being frantic for whatever reasons, and Uli just like hearing the worst possible news and leaning on a friend, and Bert providing that help, and Snack just being ready to fucking go.
Yeah. Yeah, it from the very beginning of the episode, or not the episode, sort of. From the very beginning of the finale, we all kind of knew our roles and like really took those and ran with them. I don't know. It was very interesting because I feel like throughout the entire campaign, we've been like playing by ear, and we finally had like, okay, this is what we got to do. And we did it. And we did it well. It was very cool.
Yeah, it was all set up for us, and we came up with a plan pretty fast
Yeah.
without too much hemming and hawing, and
Which is not typical.
yeah, like I felt like I went into that last session, the last 2 episodes, like not underprepared, but just like my preparation was the rest of this campaign, rather than like we're gonna sit down and figure out how this last encounter goes.
Yeah, it felt like everything led up to that moment in a very clear way. I also just want to point out the way that Snack cared for Bidet in the last couple episodes was really cool, especially given how like flippant you had been with like, take my donkey to everyone before that, and to be like, all right, Bidet, do you know what's going on? Be sure to jump if you're scared, and like, I'm gonna teleport in the way if you get hurt. Like that was it was a very cool moment of growth for Snack to have something to care for.
Like, this isn't just a random NPC. This is
Yeah,
a party member.
It was cool.
I do think, like just cinematically, the picture of Farewell riding a donkey is just so absurd with like this ridiculous plan. Like, let's offer.
I like the image of thinking of Snack, and then kind of imagining his final destination is this dragon on a mountain, and then the reality of his final destination is Farewell on a donkey.
And it's
With
not
his
just
eyes
any
closed.
donkey.
With his eyes closed.
It is the oldest, grossest donkey in the world.
And a genie coach whispering into his ear.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. It was just really good.
And I think the finale was very interesting because we took roles that we wouldn't normally have taken.
Yeah.
Snack took the like diplomacy role. He went to go be a distraction and talk to Moja, and like he wasn't the big deciding factor and the like big explosion. Well, he was, but
Yeah, until it was, yeah.
but the intention was, okay, I'm gonna take this like side role while you guys go handle it.
Yeah.
Which was character development, and in our final actions, it was like very interesting that we all kind of switched places.
It's exemplary how consistent that is too. And I'll just kind of go around the table here. Like Holly, the homemaker, the businesswoman, the provider, became the elder hag
Yeah.
and led the charge against Moja.
Yeah.
In the most kind of powerful, like direct way possible, and like convinced or controlled the vampires away from the party after. You said earlier, it's like you don't give a shit about the party, like you want to go through with your own thing. And she became a vampire just so the party could have a strategic advantage in this moment.
I think it was interesting too because the first thing she did when we got into the rainforest that had sprouted from the acorn was fail against the vampires.
Yeah.
She couldn't control them, and so I loved that because it was literally the roll was bad,
Yeah.
and so I like rolled a really low, like a 2 or 3 or something, and Tim was like, "Yeah, you don't control shit," and I was like, "What have I done?"
Yeah.
I became
all
a
this for
vampire for
what?
nothing.
Yep.
Yeah, so it worked out. I think that was a really I was annoyed in the moment about my role, but then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it actually played out to be pretty cool. So
Yeah.
And yeah, we've touched on Tibio before. In the final moment there, Tibio he had perfectly equal opportunity to choose to use the ability to suck a soul back into the underworld, which is what his mode armor was meant to do, or to bar a soul from entering the underworld, which is also what his suit was meant to do. And instead of doing the final blow against Moja, which is kind of where I think it was set up to go, he chose to bar Ilya's soul from dying.
Yeah, like that's kind of what he was there to do was
Mm-hmm.
close the rift, get
Yep.
Moja into the rift. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tibio didn't go to the rift. Tibio stood back and handled something extremely important that Uli had trusted him to do instead of taking on the role that he had initially been given, which was very interesting. And instead, Uli and Holly went and handled it, which was not what we were supposed to be there to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel a lot of feelings about my choices in the last episode. I didn't know I was going to do that until I did it.
Yeah.
we usually don't.
Yeah.
We usually
Yeah.
don't. A lot of Tibio is just me just diving in.
But the whole campaign, you're being set up to be the savior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
all
wa-
of this pressure and all of this accepting that death is necessary and knowing that doing harm for the greater good is sometimes acceptable and struggling with that and all of the growth and the change that he's gone through and trying to get past the idea that he has to do it all himself and that he has to be this connection to the other underworld in a way that nobody else can be. And linking it all to curse breaking and getting to this point where he felt like Moja was this person that he had to fight all by himself and he was the only one that knew how or could or something. It just, and in those last moments going, fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not you. Yeah.
Tibio would save a life over anything
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and wouldn't sacrifice someone to get this done for anything.
Mhm.
And just, choosing to save Ilya was everything. In that moment, it was everything. And I'm really proud of that. And I didn't know I was going to do it going in. And especially because I spent the previous turn fucking it up.
Mm.
I fucked up dragging Moja's soul down to the underworld the first time. It just had no effect.
Mm-hmm.
And having that opportunity to do it a second time and choosing something else, it felt so right. It just felt perfectly right. Yeah, I'm still really happy about it. And yeah, I get a little emotional about it because it just felt perfectly Tibio.
Yep.
And then you have Bert and Snack taking on the actual curse breaking
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to any of the other trained curse
Right.
breakers.
And then the perfect follow-up was Bert just being like, yoink.
I was sure my turn was bringing Ilya back
Yeah.
to health.
Which is even better because, I'm so obsessed with the rule of threes, and this would have been the third time that Bert had saved Ilya.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
yeah.
And instead,
And so then she was saved, and I was like, I got this dispel thing. And I rolled my dice, and it went behind my iPad. So I was like, it's going to be a fucking 1.
Yeah.
So I moved my iPad, and I was like, oh, a 20.
yeah,
yeah,
That's good.
it was just you spent the entire campaign being the outsider who wasn't the curse breaker, who effectively didn't do any of that, and then landing the killing,
Mm-hmm.
the final. I don't know. It wasn't the killing blow technically, was it? But it was
it really
important.
was. Yeah,
Was it?
Yep.
It felt so perfect because the whole campaign had been us learning how to curse break and how important it was to beat something down and then use the curse breaker spell as the last resort. And that's how you kill the bad guys. And then in that moment to have it be there is no right way.
Yeah.
It's all just a matter of perspective. It's all just a matter of how you want to do it. And our whole group is about finding new ways to do things that make sense. And having Bert just be like, actually, I have a spell for that.
Like, I'm
Was
gonna
just
do it
like-
my way.
Perfect.
And
It was
there's-
just so good.
There's a long line of NPCs in this campaign, if you listen back, and it's pretty spread out. But I've repeatedly used the line, "Once you find a solution for something, people rarely seek another."
Yeah.
And I've had that come from several NPCs, and that was kind of a hint at like.
Turns out
It's like-
arcane magic is bad for curse breaking.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've been telling you guys this whole time. This is the curse breaking strategy. This is the tattoo. This is how you do it. And you guys found a completely different way to handle it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to follow the rules.
And I think Jeannie was always meant to show that there are other ways of handling it.
Yeah.
Jeannie
Yeah.
can just eat them.
Yep. Also, they can be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the snack character flip in this one was being given the opportunity to be a full dragon and choosing friendship instead.
Yeah, that was so good.
It was really cool. I don't know. I feel like we all did very interesting, totally strange choices, and it was great.
Yeah, I guess I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't know how like conscious the choices were to make those decisions. It just kind of
It felt right in the moment.
felt right, and
Yeah.
it just kind of happened. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, that was actually all really good.
Yeah, it really is only after the fact that we can kind of put all these things into little logical silos
Yeah.
and be like, oh, yeah, that's so perfect.
I do remember in the moment thinking, I can stay here and fight and try and save my sister, or I can like go totally off books and like run away from it and do something else.
Yeah.
Like,
Trying to
Like-
end it some other way.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
am I needed here or am I needed there? And then,
You and I had a moment, Maggie,
Mhm.
where I don't know if it was you and I or if it was Uli and Tibio.
was both.
But it was a moment of like you having to make that choice and me / Tibio just being like, I got this.
Yeah. And me being like, okay, you're my friend and I
Yeah.
trust you.
And that was the same thing that happened with, Tibio saved Ilya, and I was just like, Bert's got to have it.
Yeah. Like my
I'm
role here
trusting.
is done.
I'm trusting.
It was really cool.
Well, I think we could talk about Cursebreaker for the rest of our lives, but we do have to call the campaign officially closed at some point, and I think that moment is right now. So let's set our sights on the next great thing, which is Campaign 2, coming eventually. I want to give all of our listeners a huge thank you, whether you know us personally or not. Especially if you don't, it means a lot to us that you're listening just because you enjoy the show. Please share it with your friends, reach out to other people, share this around. We are going to be putting the time and effort and elbow grease into season 2, and we're going to make it, as good as we possibly can. And I want as many people to hear that as they can. So thank you for spending your time with us, and expect a lot out of us, I think, in the future.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
It's over.
Thanks so much for listening. I'm Tim, your DM and your genie.
I'm Hannah, playing Holly Hyacinth.
I'm Thomas. I play Engelbert F.F. Wisherspoon.
I'm Tara, and I play Tibio Famur.
I'm John. I play Snack the Kobold.
And I'm Maggie, playing Uli.